Chapter 401. There was no time to seal the opening with a third wall. From outside the temple, Trias grinned as his spell invaded the small space between the pillar and the conjured walls. It's too late to blink away. With the walls around him and the incoming attack, he can't visualize an exit point. Checkmate. His smug expression disappeared when he noticed that the ranger was taking to damage. Wave after wave, the lightning ring surrounding the main temple faded away, yet Lith was unscathed. After the orc shaman used the crystal to unleash real lightning against me, I knew I had to come out with a solution. Luckily, a Faraday's cage is as cheap as effective. Lith thought while inside a bell-shaped copper mesh large enough to give him some person space. This doesn't make sense. How can metal protect from lightning? Trias couldn't believe his own eyes. The flimsy grate had withstood all of his attacks. Lith put the cage back inside his pocket dimension before flying out of the window that was in the opposite direction of his opponent. With the gatekeeper in his hand, he circled around the castle walls while preparing a new set of spells. Trias was outraged. Even after witnessing his power, the ranger wasn't running away. He had the gall of thinking he could actually win. Trias opened a warp steps leading right behind Lith. Each finger of his left hand crackled with the energy of a different spell ready to be released. The moment Lith saw the warp steps forming on the other side of the building, he turned around and spotted the exit point. On the other side, there was a young man about 20 years old. He was dressed in a white long wool robe and what reminded Lith of a tagelmust, the turban symbol of the Tuareg people. They emphasized his dark bronze skin and the colorful makeup around his eyes. Lith had never met someone that didn't look Caucasian on Mogar. A part of his mind wondered if the young man came from the Blood Desert, but his survival instinct was focused on the fact that he had yet to see the enemy perform a single hand sign. I knew it. The sucker isn't awakened too, but he hasn't realized this a fair fight. Or better, it was. Lith thought while unleashing all the spells he had ready through the portal. Trias gasped in surprise when 6 fireballs exploded around him from every direction. Ice spears the size of a small tree had invaded all of the surrounding space, waiting for their master's order to strike. Just like Lith a few seconds before, Trias couldn't blink. Both the explosion and the ice spears covered an area bigger of the dimensional spell's measly 10 meters, 66, range. I could exceed the limit, but it would cost me a lot of mana. It's not a luxury I can afford, not against another awakened one. The only way he could spot the warp steps despite the castle blocking his visual is with life vision. Trias thought. He was surprised, but not scared. One of his bracelets generated a powerful barrier made of pure mana that blocked the heat, the shockwaves, and the spears at the same time. The enchanted item wasn't devised to block such a powerful combined attack. The barrier cracked at several points. The pseudo-core fueling the protection was quickly depleting its energy reserves. The mana crystals embedded on the silver bracelet turned dull one after the other. During the split-second Trias was blinded by the explosions. Lith blinked through the enemy's warp steps, lunging with all the strength he had. The gatekeeper crashed the magical protection only to be stopped by a second one. The attack had been so fast that the new barrier had formed around the blade. Part of the gatekeeper was inside, stuck like the proverbial in the stone. Trias turned around just in time to see darkness magic that coursed through the weapon, filling the space inside the barrier with a black miasma. With no option left, he blinked away. Trias knew that Lith would see his exit point and intercept him, but he would get away from the deadly spell and the barrier would still block any incoming attack. Lith knew it too, yet instead of pursuing the enemy, he remained where he was kept weaving spells. The moment Trias reappeared, a volley of fireballs crashed against his barrier with enough strength to push him backward. What a cunning bastard, Trias thought. The mana released by the explosions in blinding my life vision, and with barrier active, I cannot retaliate even if I guess his position from the fireballs. Point of impact. He must be buying time for something big, like an array. It's a good plan, too bad I saw through it. A trap, it's not a trap if you know where it is. Trias bolted in the opposite direction the fireballs came from, pushing his flying spell to its limits. Before the smoke could dissipate, he crashed against a solid rock wall. Even with the enhanced body of an awakened, the impact was enough to crack his head, broke his nose, and squeeze all the air out of his lungs. With several ribs cracked, even breathing was an agony. Impossible. Trias's mind couldn't accept the idea that the items his uncle had crafted had failed him. Nothing can get past the barriers, no matter if it moves fast or slowly. They react even to mana. How could his spell blatantly ignore them? The broken nose made it hard for him to breathe, just like tears of pain blurred his vision. It took him a while to realize he had hit the castle walls. While Trias was blinded, Lith had opened a warp gate beyond him, using the explosions to push him through. The dimensional door had moved the youth away from the sky and very close to the ground nearby the castle. Unless Trias moved upwards, he was bound to crash into something. The barrier works just fine. It just isn't designed to protect me by myself. Trias had just started to heal his wounds when Lith plunged from the sky like a meteor. The impact with the gatekeeper infused with darkness magic caused the barrier to crack instantly. Trias didn't panic. He used the few seconds the dying protection bought him to open a warp steps that closed as soon as he crossed it, leaving the gatekeeper biting air. Where the heck did he go? He can't warp outside Kaduria. He must still be nearby. Lith thought. He's not within the range of my mana sense. I couldn't see well inside the steps, but it was a big closed space. We can deal with him later. Let's finish the Black Star first. Solus suggested. Trias had escaped to the main temple. His wounds were healing and invigoration was restoring his energy reserves, but he knew it wasn't enough. The ranger was more than 10 centimeters, 4 inch, taller and 10 kilograms heavier than him. Trias cursed at himself for not practicing self-defense or magic like his uncle always encouraged to. Yet seeing the cursed item almost broken gave him hope. Chapter 402. There's no time to lose, old friend. There was enough venom in Trias's voice to kill 10 men. During the last year, I took care of the rangers for you. It's only thanks to me if you are so close to achieving your freedom, yet you always denied to fulfill your part of the bargain. Make me your partner, and together we will kill that pest. Refuse, and I'll walk away. I have no qualms leaving you to your fate. There are many artifacts on Mogar, but only one me. The Dark Star wanted to curse in outrage. It had refused to have a master for centuries. It was ready to die rather than to yield. Or so it believed, until Lith entered from one of the windows, back at his peak condition. Now, Trias said while opening a warp steps that would lead him to safety, ready to relinquish his dreams of power. So be it. The cursed object spat those words with despair. Trias touched the white mana crystal, allowing the Black Star to seal the pact. The freeze spell still prevented it from using its powers, but it could do nothing when the two beings merged into one. Power surged inside Trias, giving him the feeling of godhood he had dreamed about ever since his uncle awakened him. His body shone like a star while his mana core was promoted to blue. He had avoided the event for years. According to his uncle, it was an excruciating event that could turn out deadly if the body and the mind weren't properly honed by relentless practice. Trias felt only bliss while the Dark Star's energies mended his body as soon as it was harmed. Endless vitality seemed to flow through his veins, destroying the expelled impurities. Then, everything changed. Who does he think he is? Some kind of magical girl? Lith inwardly sneered at his defenseless opponent. Nothing forces me to wait until he is done. He held the gatekeeper in a two-handed grip while using air, fire, and earth fusion to boost his attack. The lunge hit with surgical precision the chest area above the heart. But instead of putting an end to the enemy's life, it bounced against a crystal armor that promptly appeared to protect the cursed object's host. The impact was strong enough to lift Trias from the ground and make him spit blood. Seeing that even an all-out attack had left the armor unscathed, Lith turned the blade to the flat side, and while the enemy was still in midair, he struck using the gatekeeper like it was a mace. Trias flew backward with such an angle that would have made him reach the bleachers of a major league stadium as a magnificent home run. Trias's ribs shattered and healed almost at the same speed, the bone fragments puncturing his lungs realigned as nothing had happened. Yet the pain remained. It became worse when he crashed against the wall behind him and bounced towards his merciless aggressor that had no intention of stopping his attack. "What are you doing, you worthless piece of garbage?" Trias cursed through their mind link. "Why aren't you protecting me? Do you really think I would need your help if I wasn't paralyzed? You are on your own, fleshbag. I can give you energy, but using it is up to you. There are a few abilities we can share, though, like my armor." The Black Star returned one of the mighty artifacts it had consumed during its youth, making it appear between Trias's hands. It was a magnificent longsword, with one purple mana crystal on each side of both the hilt and the blade. Even without being imprinted, it emitted a powerful aura that seemed to be able to tear the whole castle asunder. It's the blade of the king. Use it wisely. The cursed object's black heart cringed at the idea of parting from such a masterpiece, but it had no other choice. What am I supposed to do with it? Trias screamed with frustration, holding the sword like it was a mop. Their conversation was fast, but so was Lith. He was now in front of the enemy in a shoulder charge boosted by earth, fire, and air magic. The hardness of the skinwalker armor wasn't much compared to the diamond-like crystal, yet it was superior to steel, making the following impact far more terrifying than if Lith had used his body alone. The crystal armor was like an unbreakable safe, but it could do nothing to protect its content from being rattled. Just like most magic protections, it was much less effective against blunt impacts. Trias's scream of pain was muffled by the mouthful of blood that filled his throat. The gatekeeper struck the longsword's tip and sent it flying away. The Black Star cursed at its host's incompetence while retrieving the blade a split second before Solus could steal it. Damn it. So close. She was in her glove form. The green gemstone on the center of the back of Lith's right hand glowed with power. Lith wasn't the only one that had grown stronger over the years. Now Solus was able to amplify the effects of the mana coursing through her stone body by consuming a bit of her own energy. It could reinforce spells and fusion magic, giving her partner an edge over other awakened ones. Keeping the two mana flows in sync required a lot of her focus. The smallest mistake would create a destructive interference that would leave them exposed to a riposte. It was the reason she had missed the chance to snatch the artifact. The Black Star was rummaging through Trias memories to find something that could give them an edge. The results were appalling. The youth had done the bare minimum in every field he had ever applied, using true magic as a crutch to compensate for his laziness instead of turning it into a weapon. The artifact deemed his 20 years of life as trash. Trias had used his uncle's knowledge and creations to take shortcuts, achieving his goals with no effort. The thing that baffled it the most was how, despite his happy-go-lucky lifestyle, Trias had an unquenchable thirst for power only matched by his groundless pride. Among the garbage, there was a treasure, and the Black Star rejoiced upon its discovery. It was a skill that Trias learned after countless hours of practice. He had been tricked by his uncle into believing that there was a shortcut to greatness. One spell to rule them all. Of course, it was just a ruse, the purpose of which was to show the youngster how hard work repaid itself. You idiot! The Black Star roared. How can you have studied me for so long yet you understood nothing about my powers? Follow my instructions, foolish man-child. Trias snarled at the voice inside his head while spitting teeth and blood. The pain Lith was inflicting him was excruciating, but what the cursed object was doing worse. It kept peeking in his personal life, in every of his most private or embarrassing moments. To add insult to the injury, it was berating his life choices like no one ever had before. Chapter 403. Trias was used to be scolded by his uncle, but the old man did it because he cared for his nephew. His words were always filled with worry and affection. The Black Star, instead, was dissecting his life and commenting on it like it was a failed magic experiment. There was only scorn in its thoughts. Trias swallowed down its pride and obeyed. His body grew in size and weight until his head scraped against the ceiling. The Black Star absorbed all of his equipment to replenish its strength before the transformation scattered everything around the room. His newfound tail was as thick as an SUV, but much better armored. It was covered in flaming red scales the size of a buckler shield. Trias instinctively tried to swat his enemy like a fly, but Lith had no problem blocking the massive extremity with one hand. What the heck is he thinking? Lith raised his eyebrows while looking at the over 12 meters, 40-foot, tall red dragon in front of himself. What the heck are you thinking? Trias echoed Lith's thoughts. My uncle fooled me into learning how to shapeshift. It only served to teach me light magic and the art of controlling my own life force. It's a useless trick. No matter my form, my strength and mana do not change. You whining idiot. The Black Star was so annoyed it was running out of insults. That was before you merged with me. I have the life force of a whole city. I amassed mana for centuries. I can't bestow you the intelligence or the wisdom of a true dragon, but together we have the body of one." Trias finally understood his partner's intent and called upon the life force stored inside it to fill his limbs with strength. Lith felt the tail getting so heavy he couldn't hold it anymore, forcing him to retreat. "Solus, what's happening?" Lith asked as the dragon's scales turned into shining rubies. Trias was getting accustomed to his new form, and he spread the crystal armor all over his body, making it impervious to the gatekeeper's edge. "The Black Star is still under the freeze spell, but it seems their bond is similar to our own. By pooling up their resources, they can achieve the physical prowess of a real evolved monster. Fight or flight." Solus would have loved to destroy the Black Star. If before she wanted to do it to relieve the Kadurians from the living hell they were trapped in, now it was personal. The bond between Trias and the cursed object was a mockery of everything she held dear, a perversion of her very existence. Yet it was Litha's life being at stake. Solus would never ask him to put everything on the line just on principle. "I'm not going to run," Lith replied, clenching the gatekeeper tight. "It's going to take time before the Black Star can act on its own. Until that moment, this guy is just a man with a weapon. No matter how powerful they are, all weapons share the same weak point. Their user." Lith infused himself with all the elements but darkness, which was imbued inside his blade. He darted behind the ruby dragon's foot, aiming for the Achilles heel. The scales were thick and sturdy, but once crystallized they were stuck in position, leaving the tender meat underneath exposed. Trias turned around to follow his movements, their speed almost matched. Sadly, the main temple begged to differ. The tail struck one of the columns, and the wings got stuck into another. Dust fell from the ceiling while Trias swayed around, trying not to fall. "This guy is an idiot. He may have the body of a dragon, but he's not used to it. Size matters only if you know how to exploit the advantage." The gatekeeper found its way between the scales, ripping through the flesh and bone like a scalpel. Trias screamed in pain, but he didn't fall. He kicked backward, trying to squash Lith like a bug. Lith managed to dodge the heel's claw by a hair's breadth and watched the enormous foot leave a deep mark on the wall. "I stand corrected," Lith thought while getting some distance from the enemy. "He is an idiot that can one-shot me. I didn't take into account that the Black Star gives him an almost endless supply of energy. I can't win this by wearing him out like usual. I must kill him in one go. If they are like us, once the host is dead, the artifact will be a sitting duck." The dragon roared in outrage and unleashed a lightning the size of a house. Lith took out the Faraday cage again, hoping the enemy wouldn't attack physically while he was unable to move. Trias didn't have the opportunity to do it. His draconic hands emitted a popping sound, exploding like a balloon. He screamed in pain until light magic restored his limbs. "What did you do to me?" Trias was so shocked that he didn't even notice the cage. "Quit whining," the Black Star said with a disgusted tone. "Your mana core is too weak to handle so much mana at once, so the excess energy flown directly through your flesh, making it burst. Would have you preferred to lose your core instead?" Lith had barely the time to put the cage back inside his pocket dimension when the dragon unleashed a barrage of punches boosted by air and fire fusion. Even with Solus's help, Lith was running out of places where to hide. The dragon's fists were the size of a truck and moved so fast they generated a gale strong enough to stumble Lith after he dodged each hit. Trias spun around himself, using the tail to sweep the whole room. The columns crumbled one after the other, adding the falling debris to the already extensive list of things Lith had to watch out for. "If only I could blink. There isn't much I can do from down here. Because of the scales I can't reach his heart, and because of the constant regeneration attacking the main arteries is useless. My only shot is the brain, but I think even that idiot has realized it by now." Lith kept running around the room while racking his brain for a solution. "The guy seems to have a very low pain tolerance." Solus pondered. "I have an idea, but I don't think you're going to like it." "Hit me." She was right. Lith didn't like it. Trias was sick and tired of playing tag, so he produced a barrage of fireballs, throwing them in random directions, literally bringing down the house. Lith was forced to use his flight spell to escape from the blazing inferno. While flying, he was forced to focus looking forward, limiting his peripheral vision to a dangerous degree. A fireball exploded close to his feet, and the resulting shockwave made him faster than he could control. He crashed against a falling piece of the ceiling. Because of the impact, his movement came to a halt for a split second. It was all Trias needed. His fist struck Lith with the strength of a freight train. Even if Lith had managed to conjure an air barrier to take the brunt of the damage, even with the protection from the Skinwalker armor and Earth fusion, Lith would have died when his body crashed against the wall. Solus saved his life by the skin of his teeth, using an Earth spell that made his landing spot elastic. The impact was still violent enough to blur his vision and squeeze the air out of his lungs. Lith bit his lips, using the pain to remain conscious. Another punch followed a split second later, when he was too groggy to dodge it. Chapter 404. Now, Solus used a bit of her energy to nudge Lith out of his daze. There was no time to weave new spells, but as long as he was conscious, Lith would retain all those he had prepared beforehand. He clapped his palms together and then spread his arms wide, making sure the core of the spell traveled through Solus's mystical glove. Both the gesture and her help were necessary to attempt such a quick cast. A huge warp steps appeared in front of him, the biggest he had ever conjured. The ruby dragon's fist disappeared inside the portal and came out from the exit point located in front of his snout. Trias had stepped forward while performing the attack, putting all of his weight into it. His own punch had been turned into a cross counter, doubling its strength. The impact was so violent that the neck twisted, snapping like a twig. Not even the ruby armor could withstand the strain, and several gemstones shattered, hitting the ground with a silvery sound. The steps closed a split second later, severing the arm at the elbow. Pain and shock made Trias fall to his knees, screaming toward the sky at the top of his lungs while holding the stump with his remaining hand. A fountain of blood painted the collapsing room red. The neck was already healed, but regrowing an arm would be much slower. Do you have no shame? Trias's pain was the Black Star's own, yet it ignored it like it was a gentle spring rain. Pick up the arm so we can reattach it. There's no time to lose, our enemy. The mind link allowed for quick communication, but Lith's speed was nothing to scoff at. Solus's plan had been implemented down to the last detail. To sacrifice a bishop to capture the king. Lith had allowed himself to fall into a disadvantageous position to bait an all-out attack. Yet the cross-counter and the mutilation were just the preparatory steps. Lith exploited the literally blinding pain to blink without the opponent noticing it, and appeared between the dragon's eyes. The gatekeeper penetrated the cornea until only the hilt was visible. Lith gave everything he had to the sword, channeling air magic which generated a lightning that gave the dragon a violent seizure while a wave of darkness magic made its way toward the brain. Lith had done everything he could. His execution had been flawless. Yet it wasn't enough. Trias used darkness fusion to suppress his pain receptors and became able to move again. With Earth fusion countering the lightning and the Black Star repairing the damages the moment they were dealt, darkness magic was just too slow. Trias tried to catch Lith, but he blinked away, exploiting the dragon's blind side. He twisted the gatekeeper while pulling it out and left behind enough fire and darkness magic to slow down the eye regeneration. Why are you doing this? Lith's opponents screamed as one. You are bound to a powerful artifact. You pillaged Caduria for power. You kill with no remorse to pursue your own ends. You are just like us. We should be allies, not enemies. Those words irked Lith to no end, making his blood boil and his rage seethe. I'm nothing like you, he thought as he appeared next to the severed limb and used the darkness still coursing through the gatekeeper to rot it into oblivion. Without any life force inhabiting it, the arm offered no resistance to the hungry energies devouring it. Solus is not a monster, I am. Yet not even I prey on people suffering for petty reasons. The Black Star has turned a whole city into a nightmare version of my own life, and that idiot who fused with it is willing to set it free. The memories of the Cadurians Lith had assimilated earlier resurfaced. Their hopelessness, their despair, their constant grieving until their hearts were replaced by the endless void of the abyss were things he knew all too well. You too are worse than any abomination. You are a cancer to this world, and someone has to wipe you out like the disease you are. Black clouds formed inside Caduria while the whole city trembled. Even though the Black Star was still paralyzed, the light phase had reached its limits. The shadow phase was about to begin, and the living artifact rejoiced for it. I'll get back the energy I wasted to rebuild the city and reanimate those flesh bags. If you can't squash a single bug with that much power, then I will terminate our deal. I have no use for a weakling like you. The cursed item had long regretted fusing with Trias. The only silver lining was that thanks to the freeze spell, the bond had yet to become permanent. Black clouds formed outside Caduria too. The whole area quaked lightly as the world energy gushed from both the ground and the sky, piercing the barrier like it was a piece of paper. A world tribulation had just begun. Griffin Kingdom, Royal Palace. Lady Tyrus was pondering about the recent news she had received. During the last 4 years, she had enjoyed the relative peace after decades of struggles. The academy system had been reformed thanks to Linjo's legacy. The headmaster hadn't lived for long, but his actions had earned him an important place in the kingdom's history books. After Nalier's attack, the last embers of civil war died out. The crown restored his authority by cutting off all the dead branches of nobility that spread corruption to keep themselves afloat. With the master and Balkier ceasing their attacks, she had not much to do. Caduria sounded like a lot of trouble. It was an ancient problem, older even than the Griffin Kingdom. Tyrus was already a guardian back then. She and Ligane had helped set up the barrier. Both could have destroyed the High Lord, but chose otherwise. Tyrus, because she wanted it to serve as a reminder of the foolishness of men. It was the era when there was no such thing as forbidden magic. Humans kept exploiting the less fortunate in their quest for power and longevity. No matter how many she killed, hundreds of others were ready to pick up from where her victims had left their research. Only one thing seemed to be able to stop them: fear. Lost cities were popping up like mushrooms as the legacy of Locris Silverwing was abused in every conceivable way. The only silver lining was that every monstrosity born from those experiments was a common enemy that allowed people to put aside their differences and rethink their way of life. The mages who lived in the same region of a lost city became more judicious, while its inhabitants were inclined to topple any ruler who made the poor disappear instead of praising them for it. All of them had learned to do the right thing, albeit for the wrong reason. Ligane hoped to find a way to free the Cadurians without killing them. Instead, I recognized the design of this array. She shook her head, making her long golden hair dance in the sunlight. This is the work of one of the awakened one of Salak's turf. I will not let the people of my country suffer for the mistakes of others. Chapter 405. I didn't stop Nalier because she was born out of the kingdom's unfair treatment. She was just like Balkier, the symptom of a disease that made it impossible for the upper echelons to ignore any longer. A foreigner causing troubles is another matter entirely. A sudden surge in the world energy coming from the Keller region made her and Ligane turn their heads at the same time. It's the anomaly kid again. Are you interested? Thanks, but no thanks. I'm at a critical step in my research. Keep me posted if something interesting happens. The father of all dragons replied. It took Tyrus but a thought to warp at the borders of Caduria. The black rain was falling with the intensity of a summer storm, but luckily it had no effect on Lith. I recognize this feeling. It's the same coming out of the cursed item, a twisted version of world energy. He thought while his body shivered in disgust. The rain was the will of the Black Star taking physical form. When the Temple of the High Sun imbued so many lives inside their weapon, they made a huge mistake. Dozens of conflicting personalities had been forced together in a single mind, giving birth to a deranged individual with no memory nor morals. The only thing left after their merging was the obsession to control everything under the High Sun's gaze and destroy everything that couldn't be controlled. Caduria had been the field test, and the Black Star was pleased with the results. Every living being on Mogar would be at its mercy. Life and death would disappear forever under its rule. The worthy ones would live in a utopian world while the sinners would have an eternity to be redeemed through pain. The black rain ripped the life out of the Cadurians, taking away everything they had but their minds. The process was unbearable, causing them to emit a collective telepathic shriek. Waves of agony made Lith and Trias fall to their knees. They became part of the hive mind and were forced to experience the memories of all the Cadurians, to share their centuries' worth of suffering. It lasted only for a few seconds, yet it almost drove them insane. The mental pressure overwhelmed their minds, making it impossible for them to distinguish their thoughts from the Cadurians. The two awakened ones rose to their feet at the same time, albeit with completely different mindsets. Trias was regretting his decision of merging with the artifact. Until that moment, he had always thought that no price was too great to achieve his goals as long as he wasn't the one paying for it. Now he wasn't so sure anymore. As for Lith, he stared at his opponent with eyes filled with a mix of pain and hatred. All 7 of them. 2 new pairs of eyes had appeared. One above and the other below human's eyes were supposed to be. The 7th was a vertical slit opened in the middle of his forehead. He was now over 2 meters tall, 7 feet, and covered by black scales, the tip of which was bright red from the scorching heat that coursed through them. Aside from the eyes and a pair of curved horns protruding from his forehead, his head was a featureless black slate. 2 pairs of upside-down membranous wings came out from his back, conjuring on their own enough wind to keep him a few centimeters from the ground. A long tail ending in several bone blades whipped the air in a frenzy. The shadows looked at the ruby dragon with unbridled rage. Just like the 2 awakened had experienced the Kadurians' lives, the Kadurians had experienced theirs. Thanks to that, they recognized the giant as their sworn enemy. Instead of being high in the sky, outside their reach, it was finally standing in front of them. The army of shadows charged forward with only one thought in mind: revenge. Trias's missing arm was regenerating at a speed visible at the naked eye. The stump had already reached the wrist level. He swatted them with a simple wave of the end, turning dozens of them into black snow at once. Lith took off like a bullet with the gatekeeper aimed at the still blinded eye. Trias cursed at himself for having forgotten about his real enemy. His tail whipped at Lith, boosted by air and fire fusion. Because of the partial blindness, it only grazed its target, yet it was enough to send Lith crashing against the ground while spinning like a top. His collarbone was broken, and so was his hip and left arm. He just shut off his pain receptors, letting light fusion mend his wounds while he resumed his attack. For the first time since they had met, Trias felt confident about his chances of victory. Now there is no obstacle slowing my movements, nothing that the ranger can use against me. Even if he has changed form too, in a contest of raw power we are still a dragon versus an ant. He thought. What are you doing, you dimwit? The Black Star reprimanded him. Don't underestimate those shadows. They are leeching my powers. Our powers, you mean? Feel free to break our deal. I'm sure the ranger will be happy to finish his job. Trias had no intention of letting the Black Star order him around anymore. Still, its advice made sense. He stomped the ground repeatedly before taking flight with air magic. He tried flapping his wings, but they were slow and clumsy. They reduced his mobility instead of improving it. Haven't you had enough? Trias said with a laugh while watching Lith flying in circles above him. I have to admit it, you are smarter than me, and probably you worked your ass for years to become so strong. Yet it doesn't matter. Nothing matters against overwhelming power. He opened his mouth, releasing a densely packed jet of purple flames. It was a Tier 4 true spell, Fireblade. Trias wasn't able to actually breathe fire. Lith burned with hatred at those words. In his mind, Trias, the Black Star, his Earth Father, the boy who had killed his brother, were all the same person. Someone who held an underserved power and used it only to spread misery. He took a deep breath to shout in defiance, yet no voice came out. The scales on his face opened up, revealing his fang-filled mouth, from which erupted a stream of blue flames that clashed with the spell in midair, like snakes wriggling in a deadly embrace. None of those present, except for Lady Tyrus, knew what had just happened. Lith didn't let the surprise slow him down, bringing his array to completion. Uriel's hexagram was a 6-pointed blue star inscribed inside a circle. One of the points shone with a yellow light, neutralizing air magic within his area of effect. Trias fell to the ground with the grace of a brick, and the shadows resumed their assault. Lith tried to use the debris on the ground to cover his movements, but once again Trias's tail intercepted him. Even if he dodged the hit, the shockwave sent him rolling onto the ground. Damn it, I almost forgot he can use life vision too. I must. What's that? Lith recognized from the giant footprints the spot where Trias had killed several shadows. Among the debris, there were several black floating orbs of different sizes. Chapter 406. Solus, do you have any idea about what are those black orbs? Lith thought. Incoming at 12 o'clock. She shouted when Trias opened his mouth once again. Leave the idiot to me. I need an edge to win this fight, and you are my only hope." A snap of Litha's fingers made another of the 6 points of Uriel's hexagram light up with a red light as the yellow one faded away. The Tier 5 raging sun that Trias was about to unleash died out like a lighter out of gas. Even with the Black Star's support, only a few sparks came out. The array was a variation of Silverwing's hexagram that Uriel had theorized after gaining a deeper understanding of the impossible array. His take on the spell was weaker, yet in exchange it caused much less strain on the caster. It had taken Lith years to turn his old friend's theories into reality. Just looking at Trias' shocked expression repaid him of all his hard work. First, he took away my flight spell, and now this. What's happening? The moment the ant started retaliating to brute force with technique, the dragon lost his spunk. "You are still under the array, you idiot." The Black Star's thoughts were filled with contempt. "I have no idea what it does, but I'm pretty sure that if you get out of its area of effect it will stop working." Lith saw Trias' muscles contract, and with a thought released Uriel's hexagram's full force. The array didn't simply negate one element at the time. It absorbed the mana composing the nullified spells and stored it for later use. All the 6 points of the star lit up. The magical formation was now employing the stolen energy and the arrays to generate a powerful gravity field that made Trias collapse under his own weight. The shadows exploited the situation to attack their enemy with all their might. It will not hold for long. The array drained only 2 spells, one of which was a cantrip. Lith thought. Okay. Solus replied with a frustrated tone while scanning the floating orbs with all of her senses and making her brain spin at top gear to get at least a hypothesis about their nature. "Done. We know that when a shadow touches its victim, it saps their life force and mana. Also, after killing the shadow, you recover your life force, right? Each of these spheres has its own energy signature, like a proper living being. I think that by attacking the Black Star, the shadows are retrieving their own life force that the cursed item stole in the first place. They are still here after the shadow's defeat because they have nowhere to go until the Black Star absorbs them again." Lith nodded in understatement. Even in death, the Kadurians were fighting against their oppressor. They were clinging on the retrieved life force with all their might. Then maybe, Lith grabbed the nearest sphere. "If I can absorb them, then I might be able to get as big as he is and regain the upper hand." Yet nothing happened. Lith could feel the residual mental energy recognizing him a friend, but nothing more. Like a mother that had just found her lost child, it refused to let the energy go. "So much for all that share your power with me bullshit." Lith inwardly cursed. "Useless humans. We are fighting the same battle, yet they can only think about themselves. Every man for himself then." Lith cast the Tier 5 healing spells Scanner and Scalpel. "Haven't those poor souls suffered enough?" Solus said. "Is this really necessary?" "Heck yes." Lith replied, butchering the spheres near to him at once. "Life is for the living, not for the dead. Their lives ended the day the Black Star was born. If we lose this fight, and that bastard walks out of the barrier, all cities will become like Caduria." Solus had seen their memories. She knew their suffering. Yet she was glad to have raised her objection. She couldn't have lived with herself if she just stood there doing nothing. Also, it allowed her to take a peek at a hidden side of Litha's mind. Breaking the oath he had taken the day he had become a professional healer meant nothing to him. Pretty words couldn't save lives nor stop monsters. He didn't base his actions on concepts like innocence or guilt, Lith only thought in terms of survival. Yet he considered the Kadurians like brothers in arms. They knew pain even better than he did. Lith could not only relate to them, but they also had his respect. It was the reason why he could butcher their life force without a second thought. He knew that in their place he would do anything to get free from his oppressor. Pain would be momentary, freedom would be everlasting. Lith darted across the battlefield, maiming all the spheres outside the array that was quickly running out of juice. That day his scalpels turned into cleavers. One strike was all it took to inflict a damage that would take him hours to heal. Uriel's hexagram disappeared, and Trias stood up in outrage. He stomped the shadows swarming him and unleashed an endless barrage of spells against Lith. He managed to dodge most of them, block some, and was forced to tank the rest. There were countless spheres at Trias's feet, some almost the size of a person. An ice spike ripped one of Litha's wings off. Inside it there were pain receptors he didn't even know he possessed, so they were still active. The agony of the mutilation almost made him stumble. Almost. He never stopped moving, and neither did his cleavers. A burst of flames from a dodged fireball ripped off the scales from his left arm, leaving the bloody flesh underneath exposed. Lith kept waving his hands like an orchestra director in the exploding inferno around him. Solus used her own mana to generate more cleavers to help him finish the job. Just a few seconds had passed since Trias was back on his feet, yet all the shadows were already gone. He was free to focus on the last pest. Trias infused himself with all the air, fire, and earth fusion prowess the Black Star could bestow upon him. He became a god of speed, a god of destruction. A single stomp of his made the earth tremble as it was afraid of the Titan ravaging its surface. The impact generated a subsonic shockwave that sent debris flying for kilometers until they struck the barrier surrounding Caduria. Lith flew backward and conjured a series of massive earth walls to protect himself. They took the brunt of the impact, buying him precious fractions of second that let him escape from the epicenter of the strike. The walls crumbled one after the other. The shockwave was still strong enough to make Lith tumble and fall on the ground. He got back on his feet with a kip up, never letting his eyes wander off his opponent. I told you, no matter what trick you employ, you can't beat overwhelming power. Trias guffawed at his opponent's still defiant eyes despite his battered body. He bolted forward for the finishing blow as he spoke. Chapter 407. Lith's 7 eyes burned with mana and determination. The punch was unbelievably fast, but telegraphed. He dodged before Trias's arm even started to move and conjured at the same time an air cushion. The moving fist produced shockwaves in the air, which Lith surfed like a wave thanks to the air cushion. The maneuver made him avoid the blow with ease. Trias reacted by twisting his hips and aiming the next punch where Lith was supposed to land. A sudden jolt of agony made him miss the target by almost 5 meters, 16 foot. A second and a third one forced him to fall on his knees, his stomach twisted in a knot. I cut off all my pain receptors. Why do I still feel it then? Trias saw the gatekeeper appear in Lith's hands amid blazing emerald flames. He knew no blade could hurt him, but nonetheless he felt fear. I don't know, the Black Star replied, experiencing terror for the second time in its life. Lith didn't only cleave the Cadurian's life force, but he had also enveloped it into a bubble made of spirit magic. The moment he had completed his harvest, he had brought the black spheres near the dragon. The Black Star predatory nature had done the rest. The butchered energy had been mixed together with the healthy one and was now crippling Trias's dragon form. To work properly, a body needed a precise set of instructions that were provided by the life force. Even if the Black Star was adapting the human life force to match the dragon form, all the damage Lith had inflicted on it was still there. The corrupted energy was a living torture for its host, stopping the organs it flowed through. Limbs would fall limp, organs would stop working. The Black Star didn't realize the gravity of the situation until the illness spread to Trias's brain and heart. The failure of such organs would bring more than damages it could easily heal. The dragon's eyes rolled over, leaving only the scarab visible. He couldn't breathe or even think. Trias fell to the ground while Lith darted toward the mighty creature, now reduced to a fish in a barrel. The Black Star had no choice but to withdraw its powers. Trias gasped back to life, feeling weak and sluggish. He saw Lith approaching with his blade ready at hand, brimming with power. He used air and earth fusion to dodge, but without the cursed object's help, he was back at square one. His body never had the time to adapt to the new core, nor he wore his uncle's magical protections. Without enough vigor, such a huge body was just a bigger target. Lith's first slash chopped off one of the giant feet, making Trias fall backward. Lith vertically wall ran on the stump while the opponent's body was still in midair. Trias had no time to cast a spell, so he tried to claw the enemy away. His hands flew off with a spurt of blood, yet not a drop touched Lith, who was already above the chest area. Trias screamed in terror while Lith roared with anger, releasing from his mouth another jet of blue flames that entered the dragon's maw. Trias's head burst into flames, his eyes popped like balloons. Lith decapitated him anyway, just to be safe. When the Black Star emerged from the dragon's mutilated body, the Forge Mastering Circle was already active. The runes from the Repentance spell flew inside the cursed object. Lith had no more words but the chant until its very end. At the 7th rune, the cursed object rather than a crystal star resembled a bunch of glass shards glued together. Stop. I beg of you. You have seen what I'm capable of. Imagine if I had a suitable host instead of a pampered idiot. You have no reason to kill me. You know how to paralyze me. Take your time and think carefully about what you're doing. Trias's body reverted to his natural appearance, yet the head kept burning until only ashes remained. When the 12th and final rune crashed into the black star, its fragments imploded, emitting a thud sound. The black clouds inside and outside Caduria disappeared. The tribulation was over. The light phase and the shadow phase were no more. Only the real sun shone high above Lith's head. Then, the ruins of Caduria emitted a blinding light that took the form of countless shooting stars of different sizes. Most plunged into Mogar, returning to the planet the energy that had been stolen over the centuries. The rest flew toward the horizon, disappearing with the speed of light. Lith used invigoration to mend his wounds and recover the energies spent during the battle. The rage was gone, only the abyss remained. It made him feel emptier than ever. I hope you have watched me carefully, Uriel. Lith spoke to himself. If not even a nut job like Radan had turned into a ghost long enough to say goodbye, someone like Uriel was bound to be at peace, wherever he was. I told you countless times, wardens are not useless, and neither were you. It's all a matter of timing your decisions. If you had asked Quilla out instead of admiring her from afar, you would still be alive, you damn moron. Lith said with a sigh. What I'm trying to say is, thank you. Today you saved my life. Lith still thinks about Uriel whenever he casts an array. Solus thought, I wish they had more time together. I wish I could hug Lith tight and tell him that everything will be all right. Lith walked outside the barrier, and after a lot of thinking, he called Lieutenant Camilla Yeval, his handler. He gave her a full and meticulously doctored version of the events in Caduria. Camilla had a hard time believing him. She asked him to go back inside and gave him precise instructions on how to take scans of his surroundings with the army's amulet. It's amazing. It was the only thing she managed to say once she received all the data. She put him on hold before contacting their superiors. Even the smallest events regarding a lost city had to be reported up to the top of the chain of command, let alone its recovery. It was an unprecedented event. Our commanding officers want to hear it directly from you. You are expected to meet them tomorrow at noon at the headquarters. Aside from that, you are on leave for the next 3 days. 3 days leave? I was in the field for only 2 days. The news surprised Lith. I know, but orders are orders. Return to Belius as soon as you can and enjoy your vacation. After turning off his military communication amulet, Lith took out his civilian one and called his potential date. Hi, Camilla. Hi. Lith wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon. She replied with a giggle. Her tone was different from before. She sounded more relaxed. Me neither. That pain in the ass of my handler just gave me 3 days of leave out of the blue. Can you believe it? Really? 3 days? She chuckled. What will you do with so much free time? Depends. Are you free for dinner tonight? Chapter 408. Yes, I'm free tonight, but your invitation is a bit sudden. I usually don't date people I met only once. We barely know each other. Camilla said with a pensive tone. She liked that kind of role play. She hasn't said no, and she called it a date. Camilla isn't considering my offer as a simple colleague get-together. So far, so good. Despite having his dating experience from 2 lives, Lith felt awkward every time he asked a woman out. His paranoid nature made him overthink over the smallest details, and being a control freak didn't help. He considered making the first move like exposing a weakness, and he hated feeling weak. Since all the complaining in the world wouldn't change the rules of the game, Lith knew he could only bet or fold. If he played, he could lose, but if he didn't, his victory chances would always be 0. I didn't tell you before because I didn't want to make you worry, but I'm a ranger. It's a very dangerous job. Sometimes I risk my life multiple times a day. I don't know when or if I'll be granted another leave. So think carefully before making your decision. He said in an overly dramatic tone, making it sound like he was part of a suicide squad. If you put it this way, I can't refuse. She giggled while looking again at his personal file. Lith is a bit young, but sure, he went through a lot. The plague, Balkier, the assassination attempts, the White Griffin massacre, and now the recent events in the north. Litha's life seemed to be an anthology of short horror stories. He sounds definitely wise beyond his age. Still, it's a bit of gamble. Let's hope I won't need a timely headache. Have you already thought about the place? I have never been to Belius. Lith shook his head. I'll let you decide the time and the place. Let me know if you need a ride. I can warp us anywhere. Thanks, but I'm good. Let's meet at Valorian, at 7 o'clock. Lieutenant Yeval, I need those documents and I need them yesterday. A voice interrupted her. Sorry, I got to go? An idiot intern of mine turned a simple recon mission into a hero stunt, and it's up to me to fill the paperwork. If I don't fix this mess, I'll get stuck over time. See you later. The communication ended abruptly, leaving Lith second-guessing himself. I guess I'm that idiot. He sighed. Lots of people now have lots of questions about how I solved a centuries-old problem. I need to play this smart. The silver lining is that there is no witness, so no matter what bullshit I make up, they have to take it at face value. Lith flew in a straight line toward Belius while revising with solace his own report. They looked for inconsistencies and found none. After that, they ran several simulations of his upcoming interrogation to find the answers most suitable to avoid follow-up questions. They were so focused on discussing how to belittle Litha's endeavor as much as possible that they realized they had reached Belius only when they saw the maelstrom array surrounding the city. Luckily, because of his unfamiliarity with the Keller region, Lith was just a dozen meters above the ground to use road signs and milestones to orient himself. He had all the time to stop and get down to the ground before his flight spell was disrupted. After another round of glares and insults for skipping the 100-meters-long line to get inside the city, Lith walked through the warp gate that led to the army headquarters. Much to his surprise, instead of being searched and questioned like during his first visit, the customs officer gave him a salute. It's an honor to meet you, sir. Please, allow me to take you to your apartments. My what? I expected to sleep in the barracks or at Camilla's place. What's going on here? The officer was a man in his late 30s that didn't stop talking for a second about how safer the citizens felt now that the closest lost city was lost for good. I can't wait to read the whole story on the Army's interlink. The officer said, referring to the database available to the public. They walked outside the main building, giving Lith the opportunity to see Belius. The fortified city was different from all the other places he had visited. Because of the lack of running water or elevators, houses were usually 2 or 3 stories high tops. Belius consisted of tall buildings, instead, some even 10 stories high, and all made of the same gray stone blocks. At least one building in each residential area was occupied only by restaurants and shops. The roads were paved and wide enough to let 3 carriages pass side by side. The sidewalks were filled with people of all social classes, each minding their own business. If not for the lack of smog and pollution, Lith would have thought of being in an Earth's metropolis. Noticing his surprise, the officer quickly explained. Belius was built as a military outpost to keep in check the Gorgon Empire's borders. Over time, the city expanded vertically rather than horizontally to be more easily defendable. To distinguish a rich house from a poor one, you have to look for 2 details: the number of floors and gardens. Because of the lack of space, green is a luxury, and so are mansions. A 2 stories high building is bound to be a noble house. Commoners live in condos. Why there is no traffic? Lith asked after noticing that aside from military and nobles' stagecoaches, the roads were empty. Because in case of emergencies, we can't afford traffic jams. Unless someone is very important or filthy rich, they have to move around Belius with this. The officer pointed at 2 small warp gates standing next to each other. One to get in, one to get out. He neared his badge to a small gemstone standing next to the gate, making a small 3D holographic interface appear. It was a drop-down menu filled with addresses and road names. Some were grayed out. For security reasons, you can't operate it without an ID. Use your badge and follow me. The officer selected a place called Royal Road before disappearing through the gate, which closed right behind him. Lith did as instructed, noticing he could go almost anywhere. Very few locations were not available. Royal Road turned out to be a block made only by mansions, each with high walls and a private garden. What happens if 2 people step inside a gate at once? Lith asked. They end up in jail. The system is unforgiving. Here we are to destination. The officer pointed at a 2 stories high manor surrounded by trees and flower beds. The external gate opened as soon as the officer swept his badge in front of a magical gemstone nestled on a nearby pillar. There was a folded note attached to the door. Dear Lithverhin, consider this a token of appreciation for your valiant efforts. I hope to meet you soon. It was signed by Royal Constable Tyrus Griffin. Chapter 409. Is there anything I can do for you before leaving? The officer asked. Yes, thank you. How do I reach a place called Valorian? Your lady friend has good taste. It's one of the best restaurants on Elm Street, right beside its gate. The man replied with a smirk. How do you know I have a lady friend and about her taste? It's a place popular among young couples. Also, the closer a building is to a gate, the more expensive it is. The officer pointed at the dimensional door standing in front of Litha's living quarters. The word expensive made Litha's wallet bleed. I also need clothes. Do you have any recommendations? There were two things Lith deeply regretted about having left the White Griffin Academy. It's all-you-can-eat free restaurant and not needing any clothes aside his associate professor's uniform to hit on women. Wearing one was enough to be treated as a VIP in any establishment of the Distar Marquiate. I don't know your taste or budget, but if you go to Silk Road, you'll find what you need. Lith thanked the officer before checking if the door of the mansion opened with his own badge too. He just peeked inside out of curiosity. There was so much to do and so little time to do it. The ground floor of the house resembled a penthouse from a five-star hotel. The furniture was made of high-quality materials, but its design wasn't ostentatious. On Litha's right, there was a large living room with several couches and armchairs arranged around a tea table. On his left, there was a study room with a solid wood desk. The walls were covered by bookshelves filled with books about every topic but magic. Behind the only closed door, there was a bathroom equipped with all comforts. Lith left the house, heading to Elm Street. On his way there, he noticed how people would look at him in a funny way. Most would step to the side to let him pass. A few would cross the road to avoid him. Solus, am I showing my old serial killer frown again? He asked after a mother dragged her children on the other side of the street. No, you look tired and in a bad mood, but no more than usual. Lith shrugged and walked through the gate. One of the things he had learned back on Earth was to never bring a woman to an unknown place. His focus would be split between his surroundings and his date, making him look distant. On Mogar it was even worse. Not knowing the menu or the prices could lead to embarrassing moments. Lith had a short temper if the food was bad, overpriced, or both. The Valorian was on the ground floor, its door open. The receptionist was a middle-aged man in livery with black receding hair. Is there something wrong, Ranger? The man started sweating bullets at Litha's appearance. No, I just heard about this place and I would like to take a look if it's not a bother. All the members of the King's Army are welcome here. The man sighed in relief while dabbing the sweat with his handkerchief. According to the tag on the breast pocket, his name was Xylo. After scouting the place, Lith asked for a menu. As he feared, he knew very few dishes and the ingredients weren't listed along with their names. Xylo helped him decipher the menu and even suggested some specialties that a man from the south was bound to enjoy. Is there a dress code for the restaurant? Lith was happy to have come alone first. Despite Floria's best efforts, he was still a cheapskate. Based on the receptionist's embarrassment, the prices had made Litha's poker face crumble more than once. None, but our customers would surely appreciate the lack of uniforms in the room. Meaning, feeling disrespected, Litha's expression turned stone cold. I'm sorry, it came out wrong. You are a foreigner, sir, so you are unaware of our customs. Belius is surrounded by enemies, which makes us quite nervous. Seeing a soldier usually means troubles. Spies, terrorists, a lost city out of control. Only the gods know how many emergencies happen each year. Hence your uniform would ruin everyone's mood. Lith understood why earlier the people looked so scared and flexed his shoulders. His clothes shape-shifted into his gala suit. The only other clothes stored in the skinwalker armor were those he wore back in Lucia. It was better to be overdressed than looking like a country bumpkin. Xylo yelped in surprise. He couldn't believe that someone who could afford a skinwalker armor and that kind of suit was also capable of being shocked by their honest fares. Lith went to the Silk Road, ordering a few tailor-made suits, jackets, and shirts. He then rented a few clothes to put together a smart casual suit for the evening. Thanks to the armor, they would look like they were tailor-made anyway. Gorgon Empire, Ligane quarters. Are you sure about it? Ligane asked. After hearing Tyrus's story about the events unfolded in Caduria, he now regretted missing the show. As sure as the sun will rise again tomorrow. She replied. The anomaly used dragon fire twice. If he keeps passing his world tribulations, you'll have to change your title to Father of Most Dragons. Like I care. He scoffed at the idea. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness. It's you who should be worried. A single country is too small for 2 guardians. I'm not going to kill him just because of what he could become. Tyrus shook her head. Even if that could mean the end of the Griffin Kingdom? When 2 guardians fight, maps get redrawn. She completed the ancient proverb for him. He may be a piece of work, but I believe Mogur chose him for a reason. I will not stand in the way of change. Besides, we have a date tomorrow. Who knows, maybe we'll reach a compromise. Chapter 410. Blood Desert, Salark's Tent. An hour after the Death Star's destruction. Salark hated having unexpected guests. Ruling the biggest of the 3 great countries, slaying abominations, and keeping the borders safe were all full-time jobs she did by herself. They left her little free time that she enjoyed spending tending her personal matters. New fashions designs, love interests, books, magic, martial arts training, patronage of the arts were only a few of her many activities. Unlike the other 2 guardians, Overlord Salark hadn't detached herself from human society. Quite the contrary, she was deeply invested in it, and kept herself active in many fields. In a sense, she was the most human of the 3. That was the reason she hated guests. Every second she spent solving someone else's problem was a second wasted. Soon she would resume her duties, no matter how much fun she had or missed. Her furious expression released enough killing intent to turn any sane man's hair white. Yet her guests were unaffected. Tyrus has seen her in way worse moods, and Glamis' hair was already gray. Salark had the appearance of a stunning woman in her mid-20s. She had silky black waist-long hair, emerald eyes, and a bronze tinge of skin so clear that it seemed to emit a gentle radiance. She sat on her throne, wearing a flaming scarlet robe, the blood desert equivalent of a cocktail dress, that left exposed her fair shoulders and her crossed legs from a side slit. The beer in her right hand was getting warm, while the food on her plate was getting cold. You disappointed me greatly, Glamis Klain. You did not only violate my laws, but you also brought shame upon me and interrupted my first party in a month. What do you have to say for yourself? He was my only relative. The old man cried, yet his voice remained steady. I know I shouldn't have awakened him, but I couldn't stand watching the last of my kin die. That's not the issue. She stood up in anger, making the ground quake. An imbecile like Trias wouldn't be able to devise a multi-function array, even in 1,000 years. He used your library to learn Cadurian language, your resources to set the array, your warp gate to cross the borders. Why didn't you stop him? He was young and foolish, my overlord. I hoped that he would learn from his mistakes. That seeing the horrors of Caduria would turn the boy into a man. Someone worthy of inheriting my legacy. Glamis was old even by awakened one's standards. He had spent centuries amassing power and wealth, but with his death approaching, he realized that nothing of him would be left. He had no family nor apprentices. The world would forget about him the moment he passed away. Please, spare my life, and I'll be your loyal servant. I need to find an heir. I refuse to die without leaving a single trace on Mogur. No one knows my name or my achievements, he said, bowing down with his head pressing against the floor. Youth is Trias's excuse, but what's yours? Salark replied. Because of you, the Griffin Kingdom now has learned about one of my arrays. You almost unleashed a cursed object upon my lands, even though you knew how even researching them is against the law. You are not an asset, only a liability. A light flickered in her eyes, and a purple flame set Glamis ablaze. It turned his body into ashes before he could even scream, yet left his clothes and all of his enchanted items intact. Old fool. He knew that the reason the Blood Desert has no lost cities is because of me. I'm not a softy like the 2 of you, she said to Tyrus. I keep track of certain materials, and if I catch someone creating a cursed object, I kill them along with everyone involved. Even the merchants that supplied them with the resources. What will happen to his legacy? Tyrus asked. I'll have it collected and examined to see if there's something worth using in my schools of magic. The rest will become part of my personal collection. Once you have collected your share, of course. Tyrus was both the offended party and the one that had captured the rogue awakened. According to the Guardian's treaties, she was entitled to half the spoils. Well, time to get back to the party. Do you want to join? No, thanks. I have still much to do today. Tyrus replied with a grateful smile. Still grieving after all these years? You need to get a life. Spend too much time alone and it'll breed desperation. You have seen how desperation leads to madness. Salark pointed at the ashes dirtying her carpet. The lizard at least has his apprentice, daughter, whatever. But what about you? You pass your days locked up in a basement with no contact with the outside world except for those fake awakened of yours. When was the last time you had fun? Live it up for once. When I was still the queen. Tyrus sighed. A wave of her hand turned her dress into a copy of Salark's robe, except it was silver-colored. I like your style, sister. Salark linked her arm to Tyrus's and led the way. City of Belius, now. Lith checked his pocket watch for the time. It was a magical item he had crafted while he was working as assistant professor at the academy. Aside from the army and the Mage Association, very few used clocks. Because of its complex function, a watch needed to be made of silver and required a green magic crystal. Like any other enchanted object, only the one imprinting it could use it. Between the materials and the craftsmanship, they cost a pretty penny. Hence they were considered too expensive for their use. Commoners made their own schedule, while nobles preferred sundials and hourglasses. 7 sharp. Let's hope I'm not overdressed nor underdressed compared to her. The first impression is vital. Lith was wearing a beige coat over a red shirt and white pants. He loved dressing in dark colors, especially in black. Unluckily, all the women in his life, from his mother to his last girlfriend, agreed on them, making Lith look like a mortician. Light colors emphasized his brown eyes and olive skin. Instead, Camilla was already there. She was talking with Xylo, the receptionist, and he seemed to be a really funny guy since Lith could hear her laugh through the solid wood door. Sorry to keep you waiting. Have you been here for long? Lith inwardly cursed at the apparently unreliable pocket watch. Don't worry, I arrived early. Xylo here was telling me an unbelievable story about a mage so stingy to make faces while reading the menu. Sounds like a piece of work of a guy, he said while nailing Xylo with a stare that held the promise of an excruciating death. The poor receptionist avoided the need of changing his pants only because when Camilla turned toward Lith, the killing intent disappeared. Let's go. I've already chosen our table. She took his hand and dragged him to the adjacent room. Chapter 411. Lith exploited the moment she was walking in front of him to check her out. Camilla wore a light blue shirt over a knee-length black pencil skirt. She had her long black hair down, which together with her black eyeliner and light red lipstick emphasized her pale skin. For cute, Camilla is cute. She could use some weight, though. Her arms are so thin that either she has skipped one meal too many or she has not lifted anything heavier than a fork in a long time. Their table was located along the east wall, right under one of the magical lamps which illuminated the room. The layout of the restaurant allowed the clients to have enough space to guarantee their privacy. How are you liking Belius? Camilla asked while a blonde waitress handed them the menus. It's a lovely city. I like how it prevents me from flying, warping, or even moving around without someone tracking my movements. It's a pity there are no bars at every window. It completely ruins the feeling of being held in a prison. It's not a bad place. It's just an acquired taste. She chuckled at the joke. Lith liked her smile a lot. It was warm and sincere, not like the pretentious giggle most girls did to hook up. I've always wanted to try the hoji's. It's a new recipe from the Gorgon Empire that only comes in 2 portions. Do you feel brave enough to venture into the unknown? Lith knew what it was, just like he knew he wouldn't like it. Of course, mystery is the spice of life. He lied through his teeth. According to Xylo, the hoji's was a bread dough stuffed with a mix of boiled vegetables and minced animal organs cooked in the oven. I'm glad she wants to share a new experience with me. I only wish this dish isn't as disgusting as it sounds. So, how did you end up a lieutenant in the army? Is it something you always wanted to do, or did you somehow stumble into it? Lith asked. I'm the 3rd child of a merchant household. My eldest brother inherited the family business by birthright, while my sister was forced to marry. I have no magical talent, so it was either joining the army or working as an accountant for my brother. I always liked to study, but my family didn't care much about our education. So I joined the army, failed miserably my boot camp. Camilla rolled up her sleeve in a bodybuilder pose, which emphasized the lack of muscles in her slender arm. And when they offered me a desk job, I took the offer. I started as a clerk, but the army provided me the resources to study on my own. A few years later, I proved myself smart enough to obtain a scholarship for the Officers' Academy, and here I am. What do you mean with forced to marry? My sister is blind from birth. The light in Camilla's eyes dimmed at those memories, making her smile disappears. Lith felt like the room had turned several degrees colder. Let's not talk about sad stuff. She shrugged off her frown and looked at Lith straight in the eyes. Now it's my turn to ask a personal question. How does it feel being a mage? I beg your pardon. Lith was expecting inquiries about his skills, income, noble status, or maybe a plea to heal the blind sister. The usual routine when someone tried to suck up to him. I mean, normal people have just enough magic to make themselves a hot tea, while you can fly, warp around the world, kill with a word. All things us humble mortals can only dream or have nightmares about. She made a dramatic gesture, raising her arms in the air before bending forward, like she was worshipping an idol. Lith had no idea how to answer. To him, magic was a mean to an end. He considered it like a hammer, a pincer, or any other tool. It took him a while to find something that sounded like a proper answer. I don't know if it makes sense, but to me it feels like I'm able to share Mogur's breath. A mage doesn't really command the elements. We just learn through study how to communicate with them. Sometimes, I even feel like I'm just a mirror of the world. I can reflect or alter what it's in front of me, but I can't do anything by myself. Camilla was staring at Lith with eyes so wide open that one could think her eyelids had been glued to her eyebrows. A waiter looked at the couple with a puzzled expression. I know that look, but there's no way the tall guy is the one pregnant. He placed the steaming hojies in the middle of the table and left without a word. Do I sound that crazy? What's the answer you usually get? Lith asked while cutting the meal and taking a bite. I wouldn't know. It's the first time I date a mage. Camilla followed suit. Gods, it's disgusting. She chuckled after swallowing it whole and drinking a big sip of wine to wash her mouth. No wonder I never saw anyone ordering it. I think it's just an acquired taste. Lith replied, taking another bite and pretending to chew it while he actually sent it to his pocket dimension. Do you really like it? Camilla wondered if the horrors Lith had witnessed as a student had somehow damaged his taste buds. No, I was messing with you. It's disgusting. Now I understand why people from the Gorgon Empire are always so cranky. Fancy a steak? She raised her arm to call the waiter back. With pleasure. Lith was really hungry. He hadn't eaten anything from breakfast. I can't believe I'm your first mage, though. Are all guys in Belius blind, or what? Lith knitted his eyebrows in disbelief. His honest surprise flattered her quite a bit. In case you haven't noticed it, I'm a bit old for marriage. I have no family background, nor I'm rich. Mages can easily achieve a noble title, so they usually aim higher than a grassroots civil servant. Lith had 1,000 things to comment on the subject, but all of them would sound like an attempt to butter her up. I'll take it as a yes. He shrugged and moved to a different topic. Lith appreciated her not asking him anything about the academy. In his experience, everyone seemed to think that being a survivor was something cool to talk about. Like Balkier and Nalier were just notches on his belt instead of people who stole something precious from him. Albeit in different ways. Losing Protector and Uriel had left a scar on him. He missed them both dearly. Lith and Camilla kept talking until the head waiter kindly pointed out it was closing time. Lith walked her to the nearest warp gate while hoping for the best. Thanks for the evening. I can't believe it's already this late. My supervisor will skin me alive if I'm late. Call me. She stood on her tiptoe, giving him a quick goodnight kiss before warping away. Funny, thoughtful, and he didn't brag even once about his achievements at the academy or the king bestowing him a family name. The best part is his eyes. They look so mature one would never think he's so young. Stinginess aside, it's almost too good to be true. Lieutenant Yeval smiled all the way back home. Chapter 412. Rise and shine, sleepyhead. Solus woke up Lith after sunrise to make sure he had a full 8 hours of sleep. It would reset the effects of invigoration and bring his body back to his natural peak condition. The fight with Trias had been demanding. Solus had no idea what a world tribulation was, but she knew that whenever Lith assumed that monstrous form, His mind had undergone heavy stress. What a shitty date. Lith griped for the umpteenth time. The only silver lining is that she insisted to split the bill. By my maker, just because you didn't get laid doesn't make it a bad date. I beg to differ. The food was just okay. The kiss was so fast I barely noticed it, and the "I've to wake up early tomorrow" is the lamest excuse in the book. Camilla might as well claim she had a migraine. Lith sighed. He was in such a bad mood he had returned to the house on Royal Road only because Belius's security measures made it a hassle getting in and out of the city. Lith had to give his detailed report in person in the afternoon, otherwise he would have already gone back to Lucia to spend there the rest of his leave. Stop being a sourpuss. If Camilla really didn't enjoy herself, she wouldn't have spent 3 hours talking with you. She even took into account you being a cheapskate and split the bill. Solus pointed out. Why do you think that? How many tall mages wearing a ranger uniform do you think walked into the Valorian yesterday? It doesn't take a constable to do the math. Her thoughts oozed sarcasm. The next time, bring her a nice present, Scrooge. For the record, I'm thrifty, not stingy. His paper-thin excuse only managed to make Solus cry from laughing. Lith went to the kitchen on the first floor to have breakfast. Lith ruminated on both Solus's words and the food before giving Camilla a call. She sounded really happy to hear from him, and she kept the conversation going until she had to leave for work. This time it was her inviting him to dinner the next day. Told you so. Don't forget the present. Solus projected in his mind a smug grin. Lith spent the morning practicing accumulation to further refine his mana core and rehearsing his report with Solus. He arrived at the army headquarters well in advance the appointed time. Sergeant Tepper had drilled his, "If you are 5 minutes early, you are already 10 minutes late," creed into all of his recruits. Lith was immediately brought by the desk sergeant through a series of corridors until they reached the destination. Despite the woman walked double time, Lith had the time to appreciate the rustic furniture decorating the place and the padded reinforced doors along the way. All in all, he had the impression of being inside an asylum for the criminally insane. "They are waiting for you." The sergeant, a sturdy woman in her 40s, pointed him to a door with a briefing room tag attached to it. She gave him a salute before extending her hand. "Thanks for your hard work, sir. Belius is a safer place now." Lith shook it while cold sweat ran down his spine. "Damn, first the custom officer, and now the sergeant? This is worse than I thought. No good deed goes unpunished. We have some serious damage control to do." Lith thought. "Stop whining, I'm sure that oh shit." Solus choked on her optimism when Lith opened the door. A single uncomfortable-looking chair was in front of a rectangular table, behind which there were 3 armchairs. King Marone was sitting in the middle. A golden crown rested on his head as he was wearing his red uniform of Commander-in-Chief of the Army. The king was a lean man in his mid-50s, yet he didn't look a day past 30. He had thick red hair and the silver eyes typical of the descendants of Vaelron, the first king. On his right, there was a man bearing a striking resemblance with the king who wore the red uniform of a general of the army. He had brown-reddish hair and silver eyes. Just like Marone, he was in his 50s, but time hadn't been very kind to him. He looked old and tired, but mostly worried. To the king's left, there was the most stunning woman Lith had ever seen. She wore the uniform of a royal constable and was 1.76, 5 feet 9 inches, meters tall. She was in her mid-20s, or so it seemed. There was something about her that made her look timeless yet ancient at once. She had shining gold hair braided into a tress long enough to be twisted and knotted above her head, resembling a crown. Her silver eyes sparkled like stars under the sunlight. Litha's mood was sour, yet it took him just a second to feel something was off. He gave them a salute and stood at attention while waiting for instructions. "Solus, how strong are these guys?" "The general has a cyan core, while the king has a violet one and a body slightly more powerful than yours despite his age. The woman has a blue core and an inhuman physique. By my maker, compared to her Tista, is nothing special. This is wrong. No one can be this beautiful." Litha's paranoia kicked in, quickly followed by his survival instinct. He took a deep breath and activated Death Vision. It was the only still lingering side effect of Litha's attempt to repair Protector's mana core at the cost of his own life force. Lith had yet to understand if it was an ability, a curse, or simply a symptom of his shaky sanity. It made every living being in front of him look like they were about to die. It had taken him years of training to learn how to keep it in check. In the next few seconds, Lith saw the king die of old age, poisoned, or because a spell turned him to dust. The general would die of old age, or after being poisoned, stabbed, beheaded, or simply because he tumbled and fell. The constable remained unchanged instead. It's already abnormal for the king to have only 3 ways to die, but maybe is because of his magical protections. Why death vision doesn't work on the constable. So far only Floria was immune to it. Lith thought. At ease, Lieutenant Verhen. Please, have a seat, the king said with a small smile. This is the general of the army Morn Griffin, my cousin, while she is Royal Constable Tyrus Griffin, my niece. The general suppressed the desire to curl his lip in disgust, replying to Lith's salute with a mere nod of the head. The constable returned the salute and even offered him her hand. Lith shook it, discovering that her skin was soft and silky, yet her grip was as firm as a mountain. This is bad, Lith thought. They want to either promote or demote me. Both events can screw up my plans. Worst case scenario, they want to force me into marriage with Barbie. First the house, now this? Why would a royal be so kind with me? Solus wanted to give him a more rational and less paranoid explanation. Unluckily, she was unable to find one. Chapter 413. After witnessing the events leading to the destruction of the Black Star, Tyrus decided that her meeting with the anomaly was long overdue. She had pondered if to wait for him outside Caduria, but she decided against it. Explaining how she had got there and how much she had witnessed would require a long-winded explanation about her role as a guardian to avoid a useless struggle. She knew enough about Lith to predict that he would attempt to silence her forever if he thought she had discovered his nature as awakened. Guardians didn't hide their existence. Everyone in the Gorgon Empire knew about the massive dragon sleeping in the throne room, and Salark was an even lesser example of discretion. Her rampages against the enemies of the Blood Desert were legendary. She would change to one form to another, leaving any witness awestruck. Yet Tyrus preferred a subtler approach to prevent Lith's paranoia from destroying any chance of a friendly relationship. She had joined the king to introduce herself as a member of the royal family and not arouse Lith's suspicions. Even the handshake was a probe. Soul Vision, the Guardian's version of life vision, had its limits. She exploited the physical contact to employ Mother Earth, her invigoration technique, to better understand the nature of the anomaly. The results piqued Tyrus's interest for several reasons. She was mildly surprised by Lith's distant behavior. Tyrus was used to make quite an impression at the first meeting. The real shocker was the readings from Mother Earth, though. Right where his heart was supposed to be, Lith's life force was cracked. To a casual observer, it would look like the aftermath of his foolish attempt to repair a mana core. Yet she knew better. Lith's efforts to save Protector had cost him almost half of his lifespan, yet it had simply brought to the surface something that was already there. The crack ran deep underneath his life force like an invisible bloodstream. It was made of deep-seated pain and grieving, which poisoned his very being. Tyrus had met countless broken men, so it wasn't a surprise to her. The fact that the crack oozed death puzzled her quite a bit, and so did noticing how the permanent loss of life force had extended the damage up to his eyes through rifts as small as hairlines. How energies typical of death could surge from a living being made no sense even to her. The second and most astounding revelation was the presence of a second life force while hidden in the background. It looked like a black sphere that sealed at its core a small star. The star, in turn, emitted violent waves of energy that harmlessly crashed against the sphere. Tyrus had never seen anything like that. I guess it's better to consult an expert. She thought. I wanted to personally congratulate you on your latest success, Ranger Verhen. She said with a smile that made the 2 high-ranked officials wish they were young again. Yet, this committee has been assembled to review your work and determine if your actions brought more harm than benefit to the Griffin Kingdom. Exactly, Morn said with a reprimanding tone. You were given a simple task, to preserve a centuries-long equilibrium that has kept the country safe from unspeakable horrors. Thank the gods your hero stunt ended well, but luck is a fickle mistress. Your lack of judgment endangered us all. Lith didn't miss how the general sneaked a look at the constable, looking for her approval. What a pig. He is old enough to be her father. Solus thought in disgust. Agreed. What matters is that so far everything is within our expectations. Lith inwardly sighed in relief. To Lith, the king said, "Let's not rush our judgment. Ranger Verhin, tell us everything that happened during your stay in Caduria." Lith told them about his arrival in front of the barrier surrounding the city and how he had witnessed the horrors of the Shadow Phase. He avoided dramatic descriptions, sticking to the facts instead. Lith explained how he had followed the procedure of slaughtering the Cadurians during the Light Phase and then decided to experiment on the Shadows during the next cycle. The recount of how he learned the lost Cadurian language left those present speechless. "That's what I was talking about." Morn grunted. "You are not a mage of the academy anymore. You are a ranger in the army. You were supposed to follow orders, not conduct some crazy research." "I'm a mage and a ranger," Lith rebuked, pretending to be indignant. "You can't have one without the other. As you know, if I was interested in blindly following orders, I would have accepted your other proposal." Lith had been offered a job as a Black Ops soldier, which he had turned down. The king nodded, prompting him to continue. "I became a ranger to further my studies. The lost cities hold priceless knowledge that can be used for good. I bet you are aware of the tomes I have been consulting. I need the army's resources as much as the army needs me to clean up messes like Caduria. Since you are the one who introduced the topic, let's talk about your readings." The general leaned forward with a menacing expression. "Why are you researching forbidden magic? It could be considered an act of treason by itself." "Because I'm a healer. As such, my aim is to find a cure for all diseases, including the one afflicting me." Lith lowered his gaze, as if he was haunted by a painful memory. "You have attended the White Griffin for 4 years. Are you saying you suffer from a condition not even Manohar could fix?" Morn was surprised by the revelation, yet he was unwilling to believe in such a convenient turn of events. "Yes, Your Majesty, do you know the scanner spell?" When the king nodded, Lith offered him his arm to examine it. The king cast the spell and found the same crack Tyrus had noticed earlier. "Good gods." The king turned pale. "How did it happen?" "It's the price I had to pay to defend my friends from the Valor during Balkir's attack." Lith lied through his teeth. If they wanted a tragic hero, he would give them one. "My life force is crippled. I don't regret what I did, yet I also refuse to give up on a normal life. My goal is to find a cure for all those who fell victims of forbidden magic, and only by studying the disease you can learn how to fight it. Please, continue your report." The king was worried about all the plans the crown still had in store for Lith. Suddenly, there was less time than he had hoped for. Lith then told them how by learning the Cadurian, he was able to communicate with the cleric of the High Sun who had helped him to defeat both the Black Star and the foreigner that had come to free the cursed object from its cage. "You see, this is the part of your report that I find really hard to believe, and I'm not the only one in the army." The general tapped the table with his forefinger to emphasize his lack of trust. "A mysterious stranger forced your hand. Do you have any proof to back your claim? Is this proof enough for you?" Lith took out Trias's head from his pocket dimension, placing it on the table while it was still dripping fresh blood. Chapter 414. The moment he had entered the chamber, Lith had noticed a signboard informing that it was possible to use dimensional items inside the briefing room. He decided to exploit it to achieve the most dramatic effect possible. "Did you carry that thing all along?" All those in the room had seen their share of dead people. What shocked General Morn was the ease with which Lith performed his stunt. "Yes, I have the rest of the body too if you are interested in examining it. It bears some unknown runes as tattoos which I was planning to study in the near future." He had already copied them before the meeting, just to be safe. "If you read the report I presented to Lieutenant Yeval right after the events, it matches the description of my assailant. Also, I have this." Lith provided them copies of the spells he had learned from the clerics of the High Sun, in both Cadurian and common language. With the Black Star destroyed, they were just a relic from the past. King Marone used his communication amulet to summon Brigadier General Vorg and the resident Forgemaster. It was a bulky woman in her 60s, with eyes cynical enough to remind Lith of Nana. Lith had to repeat the last part of his story to them and show them the evidence he presented to the committee. "I can confirm that the parasite array's design originates from the Blood Desert," Vorg stated while looking at Trias's corpse. "Also, these runes share a similarity with the array. It's my opinion that they were made by the same hand. These are indeed powerful spells." The Forgemaster was also a major general. They are designed to sabotage their host's enchantments, making the energies coursing through the artifact destroy it from the inside. Too bad that without the original blueprints they are useless. We could have learned a lot from them. As it is, they belong in a museum. After the king dismissed the experts, Lith continued his story. He omitted the part where Trias fused with the Black Star and most of the fight. So, without my crazy research, I would have never been able to understand the clerics. If I just followed orders, once I left Kaduria the enemy would have claimed the artifact, and now there would be not one, but two power-hungry monsters knocking on the kingdom's door. His words were filled with sarcasm and contempt as he stared at the general. Morn wanted to admonish Lith that his behavior was bordering insubordination, but King Marone's cold gaze stopped him. I did what was necessary to protect our country and save those poor souls. Neither the Kadurians nor Belius deserved to live in constant fear of each other. After Lith had finished his speech, the three royals retired in an adjacent room to deliberate. Lady Tyrus, you have heard him. The general was aware of the Guardian's true identity and longed for both her affection and a long life. By destroying the Black Star, he mercilessly killed all those people. He let an entire civilization be destroyed because of his incompetence. He should be dishonorably discharged. Please, you couldn't care less about the Kadurians. You are simply scared at the idea that a grassroots mage is now considered a hero both in the north and in the south. Tyrus stared at Morn until he lowered his eyes in shame. It's because of those like you that we went so close to a civil war. If you so-called pure-blood mages want to be respected, you should do more than flapping your gums or sabotage your betters. I wish that 30 years ago you tried becoming king instead of Marone. Really, those words made him too happy to notice the trap lying ahead. Of course. Tyrus nodded. So, I would have you for dinner, like you dream about for years, and I wouldn't be forced to hear your nonsense anymore. It would have been a win-win situation. Now shut up. I have a call to make. Marone chuckled at the idea of his arrogant cousin devoured in a single gulp. Morn, instead, suddenly realized why the king had brought him along. Not because Marone valued his opinion, but to humble him. Tyrus opened her mind link with Ligane, sharing with him what she had discovered about Lith with Mother Earth, her invigoration technique. Fascinating, was his reply. Tell me something I don't know, Tyrus said with impatience. It was her country the anomaly lived in. Charm and danger could only go hand in hand when talking about someone else's problem. Death energy usually lingers around those who somehow escape their final hour, but the amount you describe is overwhelming. It would require for him to have died multiple times, but we know it's impossible. Ligane explained. It should make the anomaly more sensitive towards sensing impending death, but nothing more. It's a nasty curse. I'm surprised he hasn't gone insane already. What about the two life forces? Tyrus asked. So you are finally interested in Manadian's desperation. Well, it all started. Okay, 3 life forces. Save your anecdote for later. I'm not interested in that ring of his. Whatever it is harmless. Tyrus cut him short, making Ligane sigh. It just proves we're right about him. He's a hybrid, but only Mogr knows how. The first life force is the common human one. The second one, though, it's actually 2 other life forces mixed together. The dragon's words made her deeply frown. The black sphere is typical of abominations, but usually it's empty. That's why they constantly need to assume world energy to keep themselves alive. The small star is the mark of powerful, evolved monsters instead. It allows them to easily shapeshift because most of their energy it's not stuck in a fixed form. I have no idea how they can coexist, nor why he has them. He's too old for that. What do you mean with too old? Tyrus was perplexed. Let's say I had a child with a human. The child would be a hybrid, bearing both our life forces. When they come of age, they would be forced to choose between one nature. The children you had with Veilron perceived themselves as humans. That's why none of them ever turned into a griffin. The opposite happened to the anomaly. According to Scarlet, when he had a cyan mana core, there was no second life force. It means that its appearance is related to his now blue mana core, as if before he couldn't bear its power. I wish he lived here. This Lith would make so fine an apprentice. You know, when Milea was younger. Tyrus closed the communication at the last second, dodging the surely long and boring story by a hair's breadth. Marone, you have my blessing, she said before the 3 returned to the other room. Lith was still sitting, his mind wondering what he could possibly give to Camilla without wasting too much money nor flexing his forge mastering skills. Ranger Verhen. King Marone said while Lith stood up at attention in a sign of respect. Chapter 415. After hearing your report and evaluating all the elements you have provided us, this committee unanimously praise you for your endeavor. Words are cheap, though, so I would like to reward you properly. Are you sure you don't want a higher rank or a noble title? Thanks, Your Majesty, but I'm no leader. A higher rank would only hinder me, while a noble title would chain me. I would be forced to spend what's left of my life caring for the people living in my lands. They deserve better than a reluctant lord. Marone sighed, but he had anticipated Litha's reply. I'm deeply worried about your health. I won't ask you to stop searching for a cure. Magic is all about research and hard work. If someone can find a solution to such a cruel fate, that's you. I believe that with your talent, you can perform another miracle. I watched you grow, and I hope to have the privilege of seeing you grow old. That said, would you be interested in marriage? I could introduce you to many noble dames. It would be a pity if your bloodline were to die with you. Also, I think that having someone to return to would give you even more strength. Thanks again, Your Majesty, but no, I know myself. If I raise a family of my own, I will not be able to leave them. That's why I made sure to teach my sister Tista everything I know. Even if I were to die tomorrow, my legacy will live through her. Please, take care of her in my absence. Lith said with a rueful voice while making his eyes watery with magic. He had no intention of having children and was well aware that being an awakened, even a crippled life force was enough to last more than 100 years. There was no reason for the king to know it, of course. For the first time in centuries, Tyrus had a hard time suppressing a chuckle. By Moger, Lith sure has his way with words. Everything he said since he stepped inside the room is neither entirely true or false. He is playing Marone like a fiddle. Aside from being a cynical, manipulative, stingy, compulsive liar of a hybrid, he reminds me of Vailron. She thought. You have my word, Marone said with watery eyes while considering that Tista was unmarried too. If he could secure her trust, whatever Lith left behind it would be hers. There was no harm in nurturing someone so beautiful and talented. Until I draw breath, I'll protect your family like it's my own. Litha's face seemed to be moved, but Tyrus could see his other scaly face grinning from ear to ear like a predator in front of a dumb animal. It took her sheer willpower to not laugh at the scene. A ceremonial sword made of silver appeared in the king's right hand. I wanted to avoid this, since it will surely kick a hornet nest, but you leave me no choice. No amount of money is worth your sacrifices for the kingdom. Please kneel. Lith had no idea what was happening, but he obeyed nonetheless. Solus? He asked. No clue. She replied after checking all the books inside Soluspedia. Lithverhen, I bestow upon you the title of Great Mage of the Griffin Kingdom. The king said while patting with the flat side of the sword Litha's left shoulder, then the right one, and lastly the top of his head. Oh, fuck me sideways. I forgot about the mage ranking system. Lith thought. What's the average age for a great mage? Too many people here know my face, and I can't afford being recognized. He thought while nervously looking at the communication amulet in his breast pocket. I have no time to lose being polite and exchanging niceties. I expect the news of me becoming a great mage to spread like wildfire. The moment he stepped outside Darius's branch of the Mage Association, Lith took off toward Lucia. He was now powerful enough that a single warp steps allowed him to cross dozens of kilometers. Mom, I'm still young. Lith tried to defend himself while casting the fastest warp steps in Moger's history. At least I date. It's not my fault if I can't find someone special. First, I never stole anything. What I have I earned it through either fight or hard work. Second, why should I trust you? Lith used that empty talk to weave all of his best spells. You're lying. The orc's crystal wasn't yours to take. I've worked hard for it. Give it back now. The creature's voice was so low it sounded like a cough when it tried to yell. Watch out. Without a colored core, I don't know exactly how strong it is, but judging from its mana flow and life force, the abomination should be quite powerful. We never met an intelligent abomination before, so be ready for anything. Solus warned him. And you are the so-called master? Lith sneered. Disappointing. How do you know about the master? The creature stopped in its tracks. Grimace. That big-mouthed worm. It didn't fail the mission, you killed it. What if I did? Lith grinned. He had almost finished preparing the field. You should watch your mouth. Your family. Truth to be told, The abomination was about to warn Lith that, in case they fought, his family could get caught in the crossfire since they were relatively close. It had no intention of threatening him. The next thing the abomination knew was that its body seemed to have been struck by a meteor. It flew deep inside the Tron woods, crashing through trees too young or thin to withstand the impact before it tumbled in the dirt. What about my family? Unluckily, Lith didn't know, nor did he care about its intentions. A blue aura surrounded him, growing in intensity with each passing second. The abomination shook its head to clear its blurred vision just in time to see the gatekeeper appear in Lith's right hand amid a burst of emerald flames. Before the creature could speak, Lith darted forward in an overhead slash. The attack was too fast to dodge it from such an unstable stance. The abomination's arms shape-shifted into two blades made of shadows, with which it intercepted the blade in the nick of time by crossing them above its head. The impact made the creature kneel, allowing Lith to execute a front kick with all of his strength. The abomination was sent even deeper inside the woods. Its body bounced on the thick trees like a pinball. What's happening? According to the Master's data, he should be weaker than a Valor. I'm way stronger than a filthy undead, it thought. The creature saw Lith's eyes brimming with blue mana as he moved through the darkness of the forest. Then, his eyes turned yellow, and another pair opened on his forehead. What about my family? His voice was reduced to a snarl as two more eyes opened, and his skin turned into scales. The blade flashed, but this time the abomination was ready. It rolled to the side while extending its right arm, still in the form of a blade, to counterattack while Lith was out of balance. The attempt failed miserably since the creature was out of balance too. Its left arm and part of its shoulder fell on the ground with a thud sound. A seventh eye opened in the middle of Lith's forehead. What about my family? Chapter 418. Lith repeated his question for the third time, but after almost dying twice to the assault that followed its attempts to answer, the creature understood the human had no interest in talking. His words were just a way to distract it, to vent his anger, or both. The empowered abomination was one of the Master's loyal servants, and had been bestowed a name from them, Jarek. Normal abominations lived alone, never interacting with someone unless they fed on them. They had no need for names, only power. After joining the Master's cause, names had become their status symbol, akin to a noble title. Receiving one meant the Master trusted them enough to need their help. Jarek cursed at its bad luck. What was supposed to be a simple investigation and retrieval mission had turned into a huge mess. Jarek was indeed stronger than a Valor, but the reason the Master had sent it wasn't its combat prowess, but its stealth capabilities. Just like Lusha was called the Graveyard, Lith's house was better known as the Death's Door. Usually one would find a single evolved monster in an area as big as the Tron Woods, yet there were three and all of them stalked the Verhen household. Also, since Tista joined the Academy, another 2 squads of the Queen's Corps had been added to the protection detail. The Queen feared that a grassroots magical bloodline in the middle of nowhere was too much of an easy target, so she had taken precautions. With all the arrays in place, the 4 elite squads, and the evolved monsters standing watch from the shadows, touching a member of the Verhen family was only slightly easier than stealing a phoenix's egg. The Master suspected Lith was behind the crystal's disappearance because he was the only one present when the orc shaman died. They needed him alive to know if he had the crystal and where it was stored. A forge master like Lith could turn anything into a dimensional item, making the search for the crystal harder than finding a needle in a haystack. Kidnapping a family member was out of question. It would require a couple of eldritch abominations to get past the wards, but by the time they succeeded, the family would have been relocated and the security increased. Also, the Master didn't want to antagonize Lith. They had followed the nameless commoner's career and deemed him as one of the chosen, one of the few people the Master was willing to share the results of their research with. The Master was biding their time before offering Lith the opportunity to join them. The youth was talented and brilliant. With his assistance, the Master could save years if not decades of research. Jarek had waited for his return for months, and this was the first opportunity it had to speak with him alone. Lith's habit of warping around made it impossible to follow him. What kind of monster is he? Jarek thought. When Lith was 12, He needed his companions to defeat a newborn and incomplete puppeteer abomination. Then he almost died fighting a Valor. There's no way he got this strong in just a few years. Unless... The revelation struck Jarek like a lightning, and so did the gatekeeper, cutting away its remaining arm. Unless he is an awakened one, and all the intel we have on him is dead wrong. Jarek kept moving as tendrils of darkness came out of the severed limbs and reattached them to the main body. Neither Jarek nor Lith was scared of their opponent. It wasn't their first rodeo. They both believed the situation was under control. The abomination conjured 3 waves of air blades, all at once. One was aimed at Lith while the other 2 invaded the space on his sides, making it impossible for him to dodge. Interesting, Solus thought. It can reason and cast spells. This abomination could teach us a lot. She studied the creature like it was their newest science project. Solus had no sympathy for abominations, nor she was worried for Lith. His mind was in a fit of rage, but not the kind that makes a man act recklessly without care for the consequences. It was focused and amplified like a light turned into a laser, and it had only one aim: to kill. Lith was forced to blink away, just as Jarek predicted. It contracted the shadows that composed its body and infused them with mana until they burst out in all directions. The space in a 5 meters, 16 foot, radius around it was now filled by countless spikes protruding from a black core. It was both the perfect attack and perfect defense, with no blind spot nor target left to attack. Before the creature, which now resembled a sea urchin, could return to its original shape, a pillar of blue flames descended from the sky, causing it blinding agony. Contrary to Jarek's expectations, instead of pressing forward, Lith had moved upwards. Lith had no idea if his opponent had access to life vision, dimensional magic, or both. By taking the high ground, he could safely observe its reaction to a blink. That way, even if the abomination possessed the same skills of an awakened one and blinked forward, he would still be out of reach. If not, the creature would leave itself open to an attack. No life vision. Solus pondered while Lith made the pillar follow Jarek's every movement to prevent it from escaping the fiery trap. The creature roared with fury and blinked to safety, or so it thought. Lith's Tier 4 true spell-burning prison encased the dimensional door's exit point. 6 fireballs appeared at the same time around Jarek, one above, one below, and the others in a square shape. The fireballs exploded simultaneously, each reinforcing the effect of the others. Enough! The abomination screamed while unleashing its trump card. A black sphere enveloped the creature and ripped apart Lith's mana from the world elemental energy. Burning prison disappeared in a puff of smoke without inflicting any damage. Jarek extended its left arm, which emitted the Tier 4 chaos magic, Spell Howling Void. A spear made of darkness as thick as an arm crossed the space between them too fast to be dodged. Lith blinked away in a random direction, his eyes glued to the opponent, while Solus stared in awe at the unknown spell's aftermath. Everything on Howling Void's path had simply disappeared. It's impossible. Darkness magic is supposed to be slow. Solus was flabbergasted. Not only did that thing move fast, but it also made matter decay in an instant. Chaos magic was a twisted version of darkness magic, something that only abominations could use. Light and darkness were 2 faces of the same coin, yet abomination could forcefully sever the connection between them. Nature abhorred the void. Whatever was hit by chaos magic wouldn't just rot, it would also transfer its innate light energy to restore the balance, leaving the victim with no protection against the invading darkness. Chaos magic moved fast because its energies were attracted by light magic like magnets of opposite poles. Last chance. Give me the purple crystal or die. Jarek was tired of being Lith's punching bag. It preferred to defy the master's orders and kill one of the chosen rather than die. Chapter 419. Lith's answer came in the form of maniacal laughter. There was no joy in it, only mockery and spite. The 7 eyes blinked, and so did Lith. This time Jarek quickly turned around and looked for its opponent while weaving dimensional and chaos spells. The abomination cursed when it discovered that Lith wasn't behind nor above. Jarek knew that even a split second could be fatal. A movement on its right made the creature turn its head just to see the gatekeeper's sword fly on its own with a stone gauntlet on its hilt. The abomination cast the Chaos Magic Tier 5 Hollow Mist spell, conjuring around itself a corrupted space that would destroy the blade on contact. Moving the sword with spirit magic is just a diversion. He must be coming from the opposite direction, Jarek thought while turning around. Its mouthless face deformed in what would have otherwise been a grin when its reasoning proved to be true. It raised its left hand and released another howling void aimed at Lith's head. The abomination chalked on its own triumphant shout when Lith dodged the spell by steering right, and instead of approaching, he kept his distance. Only then Jarek noticed that both Lith and his sword were moving in sync, like sharks circling around their prey. It took the abomination a second to understand what was happening. An array. I need to get out of here, it thought. Yet the realization was a second too late. Lith and Solus were casting it together, reducing the time required to materialize the magical formation. Jarek attempted to blink away and failed. Darkness was one of the elements necessary to cast such a spell, and it was now sealed. Jarek then took off, but another burning prison cut off all the possible escape routes. The explosion sent it back to the middle of the array as a checkmate spears materialized and pierced it from every direction. The abomination tanked the damage and managed to escape from the array. Its body shape shifted into a smaller form to offer a more difficult target while it darted toward the forest. Jarek needed to feed. Unlike awakened ones, abominations had no access to invigoration. Mogr had turned its back on them. The only way they had to gain world energy was stealing it. Trees also meant shadows, and once Jarek reached one, its powers would make it almost impossible to find it. Stealth was its specialty, after all. It was how he had escaped the detection of the evolved monsters. The downside was that it had no value as an offensive maneuver. Once fused with them through chaos magic, Jarek would be unable to attack or cast spells, and it could only move from one shadow to another if they made contact. Thanks to the setting sun, most of the forest was now enveloped in darkness. Jarek had lost any fighting spirit. Its priority was to get away from Lith enough to have the time to warp itself to safety. The scales on Lith's face opened, revealing a mouth full of fangs. During the fight with Trias, he had understood why his throat felt weird while transformed and how to use it. Lith breathed a jet of blue flames that set the closest patch of trees ablaze. Jarek couldn't afford to take a detour. Abominations had no vitals. Their whole bodies were made of mana, which meant that with every spell they cast, with every wound they sustained, they would grow weaker. Using so many dimensional and chaos spells was taking its toll. Jarek finally understood why Lith had laughed at its threats. That accursed awakened must have noticed my energies dwindling after the first howling void. If only the master had made me an eldritch, I would never lose to a human. Its train of thoughts derailed when it noticed that the blue flames wouldn't stop burning. With its body invaded by the flames, all shadows would disappear as soon as Jarek came close. Lith understood the enemy's intentions and conjured a sphere of light that crushed all hopes the abomination had of escaping. Jarek had nothing to lose anymore. Its only wish was to not die alone. Lith slashed with the gatekeeper, aiming for the head, the blade infused to the brim with darkness magic. Jarek willingly took the hit and managed to catch Lith unprepared. Its two arms fused, forming a single blade with which the abomination performed a riposte. As the gatekeeper sliced Jarek in half, the shadow sword cut Lith's arm off at the shoulder level. Yet not a single drop of blood was spilled. Black tendrils came out from both the arm and the shoulder, reconnecting them while the amputated limb was still in midair. Jarek couldn't believe its own senses. Its dying mind refused to accept such an insane reality. In a last-ditch effort, it grabbed Lith's scaly shoulders and tried to suck away his vitality, prolong its existence of an hour, a minute, or maybe just a second more. What it found was an unyielding hunger that sucked Jarek's vitality as fast as the abomination sucked Lith's. Lith infused even more darkness inside the blade, wondering why the creature looked for affection during its final moments. What are you?" Jarek asked while its body slowly faded away. Lith answered with a final burst of energy that turned the enemy into dust. "Why did you shapeshift?" Solus asked. "I don't know. It just felt right," was the only answer Lith could think of. "Do you think this master will get the message, or will they bother my family again?" "I think that they already got the message. That's why that thing tried to talk you into returning the crystal. Just like with the orcs, they can't afford to alert the crown. Attacking your family would mean revealing their existence. Solus replied. Lith nodded and warped home. The fight with Jarek had helped him to clear his mind and vent his rage. He was now able to look past his wounded pride and realize how lucky he was to be born into such a loving family. Maybe the third time really is the charm. Lith thought. Speaking of charms, remember to call Camilla. You promised to do so once you reached home. Solus pointed out. I promised nothing, she asked me to. Yet I would have done it anyway. After what I did to her, I owe her that much. Where have you been? It's almost dinner time, Alina said as soon as Lith walked through the door. She was clearly worried about his earlier outburst, yet she pretended everything was fine. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm okay now. Lith hugged her tightly, hoping that one day he would be able to make her feel as special as she made him feel. Uncle, big brother. The kids yelled as one while tugging at his legs. You have to tell us a story. Yes, he does. To Lith's surprise, Rena joined them in their plea. The story of the ranger's new clothes and the princess waiting for him in the north. Chapter 420. With Alina hugging him, the kids at his legs, and the whole family staring at him with an expectant gaze, not even Blink could save Lith from his predicament. He decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. Even if they do it in an annoying, nosy way, they are just looking out for me. There are so many things I keep hidden from them already. I'm not going to lie about something trivial like a fling. Lith thought. He had no need to explain to them how the ranger system worked. Ever since he had expressed the intention of joining the military, his family members had performed thorough research about it. If not for Solispedia, they would know more about the army than Lith. He told them about the hidden village. To keep the story family-friendly, he changed the slavers into monsters and their victims into scared but healthy prisoners. The kids enjoyed it while the adults shuddered. They knew that the more fable-like the story was, the more atrocities he was omitting. Then he explained how he met his handler, Camilla, and asked her out. I didn't buy new clothes because of her. Lith was adamant about it. Between the border warfare and the lost cities, the inhabitants of Belius are afraid of uniforms. I needed clothes, otherwise I would be an unwelcome guest in any establishment of the city. He said clothes twice, so he bought more than a single set. Alina spoke like he wasn't even there. Yeah. Also, since when does he care what other people think? Not to mention that my son isn't the kind of man who would spend money just to be able to spend more on food. Not when he can get free meals at the canteen and sleep in the barracks. Raz shook his head. Lith's cover story was hard to believe. Lith didn't know whether to be happy for how well they knew him or ashamed for being universally considered a cheapskate. Is she really a princess? Lyria asked, full of curiosity. Having a king for an uncle was still among her childish dreams. Gods, no. Lith shuddered at the idea. During his work as assistant professor, he had met the queen's daughters more than once. They were even less beautiful than Floria, and so stuck up that they were unbearable. Lith would consider dating them only if they were the last women on Mogar. Is she pretty? Aaron asked. Lith cupped his hands and conjured a 3D hologram of Camilla with light magic. It was a full-body image as big as a doll and in grayscale, representing her as she was dressed during their first date. She is to me. Camilla has a beautiful smile and seems to be a very caring woman. She is really cute. How old is she? Rena was trying to make her tone sound as casual as possible. She even threw in a compliment before asking the only question those present really cared about. 26. The answer was welcomed with a barrage of snorts and sighs. Another one older than me. What do you have against girls your age? Rena rolled her eyes, not even attempting to hide her displeasure. Nothing, besides them usually being shallow and childish. Lith replied with a snarl. I have to back him up on this. Tista's voice was sad. All the mages I met were arrogant pricks. Nobles are only interested in marriage, and commoners are terrified by us. She had summarized her whole love life in a single phrase. Even after joining the Mage Association and having asked for Journey's help, she never got past the first date. Besides, Lith is very mature and sophisticated for his age. He has even decided to travel the world to expand his horizons. Pressuring him like this is unfair. Love doesn't come with a deadline. This kind of things needs time. No one missed that her heartfelt defense applied to her too. Another dud. A woman that age doesn't have the luxury of time. Alina sighed. Speaking of time, Journey has invited us all to her birthday party. It would be really nice of you to attend. Her tone was casual, but Lith knew his mother enough to know how eager she was at the idea. Even after Floria and he broke up, their families had remained friends, especially their mothers. Freya and Quilla were among Tista's best friends, which kept the families even closer. I'll do my best to obtain leave for that day. The whole family rejoiced as Lith threw them a bone to get them off his back. Lil brother, after dinner I'd like to discuss magic with you. It was their code word for when Tista wanted to spend time with Solus or needed help with true magic. Sure, I need your advice too. Gorgon Empire, in a secret location. In an underground great hall, sitting around a humongous round table, were assembled most of the human awakened ones living in the Garland continent. Ragu, their current ruler and human representative in the guiding hand, and, aka the governing body of all 5 races of awakened ones, had urgent news to discuss. Everyone was really curious to learn what could have possibly caused the assembly. Ragu was old enough to only have 2 cares in the world: choosing a successor and searching for a way to prolong her life. Since I have no time to waste on niceties, I'll get straight to the point. She was a middle-aged woman that looked around 50 years old despite her real age being over 500 years. There are only 2 items on our agenda. The first, and more relevant, is the murder of 2 awakened members of our order. All those present gasped in surprise, fearing someone was hunting them down. Glamis and Trias Clane are no more. 2/3 of the hall sighed in relief. Both the victims were from the Blood Desert, which made the issue irrelevant for them. How did it happen? Asked a man that lived in the desert, afraid he would be the next in line. Glamis was found guilty of being an accessory to breaking the peace treaties between the Griffin and the Phoenix. He has been executed by the latter. Trias was murdered during his attempt to merge with the Black Star. Raga replied, "What a couple of idiots." The man guffawed. All of his worries faded away like fog under the sun. The Clane's territory is now no man's land. Those of you interested in taking control of the area can raise their hand. Ragu ignored him and continued, "I will not allow for senseless battles that could expose our existence. Everything will be settled here and now through a spirit duel." Many wanted to seize the opportunity and hastily raised their arm, yet when they saw that none of the awakened from the Blood Desert would take part in the competition, their greed turned into worry. "Is there anything we should know?" A young-looking awakened who lived in the Gorgon Empire asked one of her peers from the desert. Before answering, the man stared at Ragu, who nodded. "The desert, it's not like the kingdom or the empire." All those from the desert sighed in embarrassment. "Overlord Salark owns the land, literally. She grants us our territory in exchange for our services. The more you take, the more she is entitled to ask." The young man stared her in the eyes and said, "How do you think I got a territory of my own at barely 200 years of age? The idiot before me got herself killed by the Overlord." Chapter 4:21. It happened a few years ago. The man from the desert explained. Some abominations had killed most of her feathers, and Salark's fake awakened. The borders were overrun by invaders from all the neighboring countries, and she was on the hunt for the one staging the crisis. It was a real mess. The Overlord ordered Ruria, my predecessor, to cull the monster tribes during her absence. Ruria was over 700 years old and had a bright purple core. She believed that she was on the verge of another breakthrough. The fabled white core of immortality. The woman from the Empire sniggered along with most of those present. "That's a legend. No one has ever achieved it." "Yeah, a legend. Like awakened ones, mage towers, dragons, and elves." Yet, he didn't finish the phrase. He simply waved at his peers. Anyway, Ruria was certain that with more life and death battles, she could finally evolve. She defied Salark and told her to shove those bullshit orders up her feathery ass, wishing her to enjoy the experience. And here I am. Wait, how did you get a territory without anyone challenging your claim? I'm sure this is the first assembly in decades. Because I didn't claim it, Salark gave it to me. Back then, I was a wandering awakened who had agreed to help her. She gave me Ruria's territory as a reward for my services, not before taking most of Ruria's treasures and books for herself. The man sighed at the memory. Salark had left him the crumbs, yet even those were more than he had ever dreamt about. He couldn't even imagine how powerful the Guardian had to be berate such knowledge to the point of gifting it away. This is unacceptable. An old woman from the kingdom yelled in outrage. How can you bow down like sheep to a bloodthirsty tyrant? Why haven't we killed Salark already? At those words, the hall fell into silence. Raghu looked at the woman like she was insane. Sure, we can beat her, but at what price? How many of us are willing to die in the attempt? Not a single hand was raised. Let's suppose for a moment that we kill Salark, that the other guardians don't decide to avenge their fallen comrade. Then what? Who is willing to assume the duty of a guardian? To prevent the chaos that would ensue after her death from triggering a war that could destroy all of our territories. Under the disgusted gaze of the other awakened, the woman understood the foolishness of her words and lowered her gaze in embarrassment. If I ever hear such nonsense from you again, Zola, I'll think you've become senile and take you out myself. Enough wasting my time. Who's still interested in Clane's territory? Those who already had a territory in another country lowered their hands. They didn't want to become Salark's underlings. Only the wandering awakened remained. Even if they had to pay their due to Salark, it was better than the alternative. Very good. Before proceeding with the spirit duel, the second item on the agenda. Trias Clane wasn't killed by Salark, but by a 17-years-old ranger. I suppose you have heard about Lithverhen. Raghu was discomforted noticing that only some of the awakened from the kingdom recognized the name. She distributed pieces of papers with all of his known achievements. He must be an awakened too, said Zola, trying to regain a part of her credibility. Trias was a lazy idiot, barely 20 years old, but Glamis awakened him when he was still a kid and provided him with his best equipment. A street urchin awakened like Nalier managed to kill Linjos, one of the best mages of the kingdom. I can't believe a ranger still wet behind his ears could defeat Trias with fake magic. Agreed. Raga nodded. Fine, but who cares? Said the young woman from the kingdom. He's playing by the rules, pretending to be a genius, and minding his own business. Heck, we should send him a thank you card for getting rid of the Black Star. Many agreed with her. You are all idiots. It's no surprise many of you are stuck at a blue core even after centuries. Raga stared at them like they were trash. I just told you that a 20-year-old awakened, backed by one of the most powerful men of the desert, and with a bright cyan core has been defeated by someone even younger with no background. How can your answer be, who cares? The revelation amazed most of the younger awakened, while the others were simply interested enough to be relieved of their boredom. Gorgon Empire, in Magic Empress Milea's throne room. After months spent wandering the Garland continent, Scarlet the Scorpicore was fed up with failing at everything and had decided to ask for Ligane's help. The problem was she had no way of contacting him. The rune of his communication amulet had been offline for weeks, forcing her to meet him in person. Luckily, Milea knew about Scarlet and her most notable aliases, so getting an audience with the fabled Magic Empress hadn't been too hard. Good morning, Your Majesty. Thank you for receiving me with such short notice. Scarlet's human form gave her a deep bow. She looked like a woman adventurer in her 30s. Her ashen gold hair had red shades, and she wore a gold-rimmed pince nez on her nose. Unlike the Guardians, she had chosen an inconspicuous human form for her travels. She could barely stand humans as it was. She had no desire to have flocks of admirers pestering her. Any friend of Ligane is also my friend. It's an honor to meet one of the lords of the forest. Milea allowed Scarlet to stand up and shook her hand. I relinquished that title. Now I'm simply the first of my kind. Scarlet didn't like the idea of being called the mother of all Scorpicores. She found it pretentious and it made her feel old. What can I do for you? Milea asked. Thank you, but I just need to talk with the old lizard. Coming here was the right move. He's been very busy of late. Without a mind link, it's impossible to reach him. Milea closed her eyes for a second, and a humanoid warped next to her. Scar, you haven't changed at all, Ligane said with a disappointed voice. He had the appearance of a lean albino man, 175 meters, 5 feet 9 inches, with snow-white hair and skin. His eyes were purple with vertical pupils. He was wearing a lab coat over a set of pitch-black clothes. It's nice to see you too, Scarlet replied with an inhuman growl. Since we are both busy, I'll get straight to the point. After Salark saved Balkier and Linjos' death, I've decided to step up my game and become a guardian. After failing to avenge her comrades, losing her only human friend had been the last straw. Yet no matter what I do, ever since I fought your feathery lady friend in the desert, no world tribulation has occurred. I left my forest because I knew that a quiet life also meant no challenges and no tribulations. Chapter 422. I've slain countless fallen, righted several injustices, helped those in need, but to no avail. To add insult to the injury, my core is still blue. For the God's sake, I'm over 300 years old. What am I doing wrong? She said, looking at me, Leia, with envy. The Empress was in her early 30s, yet she already had a deep purple core and a body powerful enough to fight on par with an evolved monster. I wonder how the heck did he did it? Scarlet pondered. It's too bad not even my artifact can see through a guardian. I always wondered what kind of core they have. A wave of Ligane's hand made 2 armchairs appear, one for himself and the other for his guest. Excellent question. The short answer is everything. If you want the long one, you'd better sit down. It will take a while. Scarlet rolled her eyes and prayed for a swift death before doing as instructed. To Scarlet, Ligane asked, "First of all, since when were you a hero? Why would helping others trigger a tribulation?" Tyrus explained to me how tribulations work. The last one happened while I was seeking justice for my friends, so I thought that what Mogr wants from me is to do the right thing. She replied, "That's absurd. What happened to Balkir was an injustice, yet he never experienced a tribulation. When the anomaly fought Nalir, he did the right thing, but again, no tribulation. They happen when something deeply rooted inside of you resonates with what Mogr wants. Mogr couldn't care less about right or wrong, fair or unfair. The only right thing you did was to leave your turf. Without hardships, there's no growth. Then tell me, what does Mogr want from me?" The idea of having wasted months of hard work frustrated her to no end. "If I tell you, having a tribulation will become nigh impossible. Once you know, you would do the right things for the wrong reason, getting your prize. I suffered seeing Mogr's wonders disappear, and so did Mogr. That's how I became a guardian. If I started hoarding knowledge and creatures just to please the world, there would be no resonance between us. The feeling must be sincere, not cynical. Okay, fine. What about the blue core? Why am I stuck?" She snarled. A blue core is the natural apex for most bodies. Very few can host a purple core because the mind, body, and mana must be in perfect sync. Up to the blue core, you only need to refine your body and lower the resistance it offers to the mana flow by removing impurities. A purple core, however, requires that even the mind must not be a hindrance. Using magic must become akin to breathing to you. Moving a finger or casting a spell should require you the same focus. Humans have a hard time getting a purple core because of their flimsy bodies, beasts because of their powerful bodies. We naturally tend to be reliant on brute strength, just like humans use magic even to wipe their own asses. So, it's just a matter of practice? Because I have studied magic for centuries. Scarlet was still confused. Not of practice, but of understanding the nature of magic. You make it flow instead of letting it flow. Ligane shook his head. "Okay, I give up. Can you help me like you did for her?" She pointed at me, Leia. "I could, but that could hinder your path to guardianhood. You would learn my way of using magic instead of discovering yours. It could alter the way you perceive yourself and the world. What about the humans?" Frustration was driving her insane. "I've met a crazy head at the White Griffin with a purple core. How is it possible? Some creatures are born with a perfect mana body and a twisted mind. Only such individuals, if incredibly lucky, can host a purple core, yet it comes at a cost. In their case, the impurities left are a safeguard. If they awaken, they die because their bodies are synced to a static mana, not to a flowing one. Any advice?" Scarlet stood up. The whole visit had felt like a waste of time to her. "Yes, one. Open yourself to the world. Laugh, cry, fall in love, hate. Whatever you do it from the depths of your heart. Being a guardian requires staying true to oneself. As for the core issue, just stop thinking of magic as if it's not part of you. Every spell you cast, every item you forge master, it defines you. Just like the words you say or the decisions you make." Ligane stood up while offering her his hand. "I always admired you for never forcing an awakening, not even for your friends. I don't know if you'll ever become a guardian, but I'm certain that you'll get a purple core in no time. Thanks for your wisdom," Scarlet said while smiling for the first time in months. Tron Woods, inside Solus's tower form. After dinner, Lith and Tista had left home for the mana geyser that would allow Solus to take part in their conversation. Once inside, Lith told his sister the truth about Kaduria and his fight against the unknown awakened one. Then, he told her about his encounter with the empowered abomination. That thing wanted my crystal. The rest of the family is safe here in Lusha, but once you leave, you may become a target. This master could try to get you to force my hand. Lith said, Are you telling me to stay cooped up home? Tista was mildly annoyed. No, just to be careful. Remember what I taught you about abominations, and keep your eyes open for black cores. If you're in danger, run. Lith was done protecting his sister from the truth. She was old and powerful enough to make her own choices. Thank you, little brother. I'm glad you trust me so much. Tista had feared Lith would give her a paranoid speech to change her mind about her trip. You're welcome. Now, I need your advice. Once he had finished telling her about his first date and the blunder he made after being conferred Great Mage, Tista didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The good news is that she definitely likes you. Otherwise, instead of asking you to call her, she would have canceled the date. The bad news is that if you don't handle things carefully, she'll expect a betrothal gift from you. I know, right? Solus chimed in. I told him to give her a nice present, but Lith's idea is insane. Hear me out before calling me crazy. Lith sighed. I can't give her a dimensional ring because it's too expensive, right? The simplest of Lith's creations was worth several gold coins, while military officers were paid in silver. At the same time, since I don't know what she likes, flowers or sweets would be impersonal and unimaginative. Don't forget cheap, Tista pointed out. Fine. Cheap too. Two don't want to show off, nor do I want to screw up again, so I thought about a compromise. Lith walked towards his forge mastering lab and disappeared for a couple of minutes before returning with what looked like a green breadstick. Chapter 4:23. The moment Lith imprinted the green stick, a flower made of flames bloomed from its tip. Tista had never seen something like it, mostly because it was a reproduction down to the smallest detail of a double-flowered Camellia japonica from Earth. With a series of mana sparks, Lith made it turn snow white, ice blue, midnight black, sunny yellow, chestnut brown, and red again. It's the perfect compromise. Lith offered the flower to Tista to let her examine it. It's almost as cheap as a flower, but has the cool allure of magic. On Mogr there were no greenhouses. The only available flowers were the wild ones, or those which people grew in their own garden. Only nobles could afford a gardener, and even then, they only cultivated plants that could thrive in their region. It was the reason why flowers were considered a cheap present. With the money necessary to buy dimensional items or get access to warp gates, it would be more convenient to buy a house rather than export plants. Also, I chose materials that can't hold the imprint for long. In less than a week, the magic stored will dissipate, and I made it so that the visual effect will resemble the withering of a flower. This way, she has to tend to it like it's the real deal. The idea behind my creation is that if she likes it, every time she recharges it or changes the element stored, she is likely to think about you. Tista cut him short while moving her hand over the fiery flower. It was ethereal and barely warm. Do you like it? Lith asked with a smug grin. This is the most romantic thing I have ever seen. What is it called? Camellia. Lith had no imagination for names, so he stuck with the original one. You named it after her? You've known her for less than a week. More like I picked a flower that reminded me of her name. He thought. First, if you give her something like this, you might as well add a betrothal gift. This is too much for a second date. Heck, maybe even for a 10th one. Tista stared in awe at the multiple layers of petals and the hues of color each one had. I said the same thing, but he is too damn stubborn. Solus sighed. Second, I resent that you've never made something this cute for Mom, Rena, or I. Yet you invented this camellia for a complete stranger. Tista said with an angry voice. Those words struck hard at Lith, to the point that Solus intervened in outrage. That's really unfair of you, Tista. You are the reason why Lith became a healer in the first place. He took care of you when you were ill, gave you the best cuts of meat, even if he was still hungry, made sure you always had fur clothes. Have you forgotten the toys he made for you? Like the rocking chair? And it was actually a swing. See early chaps, or that the house you live in, just like the clothes you wear all come from his hard work? He did a lot for you, kid. Tista lowered her gaze, feeling ashamed of herself. Her rage disappeared like a bubble. I'm sorry, little brother. I didn't mean it that way. I guess I'm just jealous of your talent and of Camilla's luck. I've never received anything like this from any of my dates. It's beautiful. Maybe even too much. Why are you jealous? It's just a trick, Lith said, trying to console her, as 5 different kinds of elemental flowers bloomed on his fingertips, while a 6th one bloomed on his palm. It may be just a trick, but the thought behind it is quite deep. I wouldn't give it to her so soon. She tried to mimic him, but her flowers either looked like crumpled origami or as someone had stomped on them. I've been awakened since I was 4. It's just a matter of experience with first magic. He shrugged. Okay, let's put the camellia aside. Then what the heck should I give her? I guess you were forced to go with flowers. Everything else would feel like you're showing off your magic or trying too hard. She is from Belius. Based on your stories, there isn't much green there. Bringing her a mixed bouquet is the safest route. Tista replied. Lith pondered Tista's words while the girls talked about their respective travel plans. He left them alone and went to study the purple crystal stored in the tower basement. The empowered abomination's attempt to retrieve it was proof of the crystal's value. He tried to activate the pathways marked by the master's device with little success. The crystal rejected Lith's personal mana even in the form of spirit magic. The only way he had to interact with it was by manipulating the world energy, as the gemstone absorbed it to further its growth. It was a delicate process. If Lith applied too much pressure, the world energy would be tainted by his mana and expelled from the crystal. Too little, and it would wander off the pathways, producing no effect. Good grief. This may take months of focused practice. I don't have that much time, at least not right now. Lith sighed. After returning home, he finally had the time and the privacy necessary to make the call. Once again, Camilla had the hologram disabled. Lith took it as a bad sign. Sorry for calling you this late. I didn't want to bother you again while you were at work. He said. Why are you apologizing? I'm the one who asked you to call me. She didn't sound upset or uncomfortable. Is everything okay at home? How did your parents react to the news? Oh, great one. Camilla chuckled. Better than okay. Everyone is happy as a clam. They accepted the change much better than I did. Sorry if I freaked you out earlier. With all I've been through in my life, I've become a hopeless pessimist. The higher a commoner gets, the bigger a target he becomes. Sadly, I know what you mean. Let's not talk about sad things, though. I was thinking, would you like to go to a music restaurant for our second date, or would you prefer a more classic location? She brought up the date topic on her own. I'm safe. Lith clenched his fist in triumph. What's a music restaurant? It's a new kind of establishment that's becoming quite popular in the North. They offer live music to their customers. The brave ones can even take part in the show. It's more expensive than a regular restaurant, because they have to be magically soundproofed and enchanted so that everyone can talk and listen without going deaf. Told you so. Solus gloated. She recognized you from the receptionist's description, my dear Ebenezer Scrooge. Lith cursed Xylo's bloodline out to the 7th generation before replying. Sounds interesting. I'd be glad to give it a try. My treat this time. I'm the one that got promoted. Still daring even after the Hoji's fiasco? Sweet. The hologram popped up. Camilla was dressed normally, but she was dabbing her hair with a bath towel. The steam in the background was a clear sign she had just finished bathing. That, and the way her shirt stuck to her body like a second skin, made Lith's usually cold heart quicken its pace. Chapter 424. The following morning, Lieutenant Camilla Yeval was fixing her hair in a bun before going to work when she received a call on her communication amulet. I hope it's not Lith again. Last night we ended up talking until it was really late. I don't like clingy guys much. The smile on her face disappeared as soon as she saw whose rune was blinking. Has something happened to Zinnia? Is she all right? Good morning to you too, dear. Your sister is fine. Can't a mother just want to hear from her daughter? The voice was sweet and caring as Camilla remembered it. Yet she knew it was just a pretense. After she had escaped from the marriage her family had arranged for her by joining the army, Camilla had cut all ties with them. The last time she had heard from her mother, Kima, was when she had been promoted to the rank of first lieutenant. Kima had aimed to exploit her daughter's authority to solve some problems with the local constables. The family hadn't taken her refusal well. The only reason they had exchanged contact runes was that Camilla was worried about her sister. Zinnia's husband wasn't a bad man, but he was cold and uncaring toward her. Their marriage was just a business deal. He considered her nothing more than a trophy wife. What do you want this time, mother? Camilla's voice was cold and detached, but her hands started shaking. She stung her hand with the hairpin a few times before giving up on her hair until the call was over. We haven't talked in months. Can't you call me Mom at least? What do you want this time, Kima? Her voice became even colder while stressing her mother's first name. Nothing. I just heard that there is this mage courting you, and I was worried about you. You know how those monsters are. They think that they can take whatever they want because of their powers. It's awful like some people treat others like objects. People like you. Camilla thought with anger. Don't worry, he's very kind. I'm sorry, but I'm late for work. If there's nothing else. She said, trying to end the conversation quickly. Oh, my sweet child, you're so naive. Of course he is kind. He has yet to get what he wants. Despite your age, you are still a beautiful woman. You need to play your cards right. Kima's allegations of Camilla being dumb and old made her unable to talk back. Kima took her daughter's silence as her cue to continue. Young men are hot-headed enough to do anything to reach their goals. If you really want to waste your time with someone who will surely dump you for a younger and richer girl, you could at least get something in return. A few dimensional items could be of great help for the family business. They would not only allow us to cut transportation fee expenses, but would also prevent our most delicate products from being stolen or damaged. You are dead to me. Camilla cut her short. When you fail, because you will, don't knock on my door because it will remain shut. You are no longer part of this family. These are the words with which Father decided to part ways with me. He didn't mean. He sure did. Just like you kindly reminded me when I refused to endanger my career to fix your mess. I'm not part of your family, and I'm happier this way. Unless something happens to Zinnia, don't call me ever again. She hung up the call and noticed that her favorite hairpin was ruined. Her hand was still clenched around it so hard that it was trembling. The thin metal pin was bent and deformed. Camilla threw it in the garbage bin before taking a deep breath to calm herself. They may be your parents, but they are not your family. She said to herself at the mirror. You didn't let them ruin your life. Do not let them ruin your day either. Camilla fixed her bun with the second best hairpin she had and left for work. Returning to Belius proved to be annoying for Lith. Not only did he had to warp around to get a decent number of flowers for the mixed bouquet, but he also had to take everything out of his pocket dimension before the customs. Belius's arrays blocked dimensional magic, which meant he had to carry everything by hand. I feel like an idiot walking with flowers in one hand and a box of sweets in the other one. Lith thought. Why did you put the camellia in the middle of the bouquet? Solus asked. Because it's either my backup plan in case I screw something up, or my forget-me-not if everything goes well. Lith arrived early at the appointed place to scout it and check the menu. This time he managed to avoid making faces, yet the head waiter admonished him. I'm sorry, sir, but it's not allowed to bring food inside the restaurant. His words and his face didn't match. He looked annoyed, staring at Lith's foreign features with ill-concealed spite. Look, I would gladly put everything inside my dimensional amulet. Too bad it doesn't work in here. Lith didn't like the man's attitude and was quickly running out of patience. Do you really own one? The man's demeanor turned amiable abruptly. Dimensional items were the mark of big spenders. More than one, actually. Lith smiled while his skinwalker armor shape shifted into his ranger uniform. I'm Great Mage and Ranger Lith Verhen. I would really appreciate if you kept the box in a safe place for me. He said the last part with a snarl, to make it sound threatening. Yet the man didn't seem to notice. His full attention was focused on the badge confirming Lith's identity and the newly appointed Great Mage insignia below it. It's an honor to have the Destroyer of Kaduria in our establishment. The head waiter took the box of sweets from Lith's hands like it was a jewel and carried it over to the kitchen. Would you like to change your table? One of those near the bandstand just opened up. Can you please repeat the offer once my date arrives? Make it sound casual. Lith nodded as his uniform turned into a black suit with a white shirt. Of course, the man said while looking at Lith like he was a huge sack of gold. Lith tipped the man a few silver pieces as a thank you and to make sure nothing would happen to his stuff. His heart bled one drop for each coin, yet he soldiered up. Camilla arrived earlier again, wearing a long coat over a red silk shirt and black pants. Thank you so much. I've never seen so many different flowers at once. She sniffed them one by one. The head waiter checked the reservation before asking Camilla if she wanted to switch tables. Does it cost extra? She looked at Lith, who became beet red from the embarrassment. We'll take it, thanks. The head waiter led them to one of the best tables in the room. Chapter 425. It was close enough to the stage to watch the performance, but also with more free space around it compared to most seats. Realizing her blunder, Camilla laughed the whole way while holding the bouquet. "Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. Where should I put these flowers?" Before she finished the phrase, a waiter brought a vase while another carried a third chair so the bouquet could spread its fragrance without standing between them. Camilla didn't miss how the staff was too friendly and the table too good for two new customers. Her mother's words started echoing in her mind and made her face turn glum. "Be honest. Do I really look like a mortician?" Lith mistook her expression for disapproval and cursed at himself for not following his sister's advice about dressing in light colors. "What? No. It looks good on you. But in your shoes, I would take off the jacket. You are a little overdressed," she said while smiling again at the odd question. "How was your day?" Lith asked after noticing that something was off. "It started pretty bad, but it's getting better. What about you?" "So far so good. At least today nobody tried to kill me," he said with a sigh while a waiter brought them the menus. "Today? What about yesterday?" Lith told her about the abomination in the Tron woods using the same tone with which he placed their order. "How can you be so calm? You almost died twice in as many days." "I told you before. My life is pretty crazy. If you read my personal file, you know in what kind of mess you're getting yourself into," he said with a sad smile as the band started playing what he considered nothing more than rhythmic noise. "As you always say, let's not talk about sad stuff. What do you think about the music?" "They are good." Lith's shocked expression at her answer made her laugh heartily. "Why that face? Don't you like it?" "Not much. The sound is good, but it has no soul." When their plates arrived, they started talking about their respective plans for the future. Camilla's goal was to rise up the army ranks. Becoming a colonel was her dream, but she knew that unless she achieved something big it would come too late in her life to matter. "If life was a fairy tale, I'd say I want to become the first magicless general of the kingdom. Sadly, the rank of colonel is the ceiling, even for geniuses." Lith didn't know how to answer. He had no big dreams or ambitions aside getting rid of his reincarnation problem. He longed for power and money, but only because they were the means to an end. He would do anything to achieve his goal, yet he had never stopped considering what he would do if he ever managed to make it. "I'd like to teach in an academy," was all he could think about. "First, there's something I need to do, though. It's the reason I became a ranger. I need the army to obtain the means to cure a dear friend of mine." Camilla didn't buy the friend part for a second, but she didn't press the matter any further. Meanwhile, the band was offering the customers the opportunity to take part in the performance. "Why don't you go up there and show them how it's done?" She said it as a joke. "As long as you promise me that whatever you hear and see, you will not laugh at me," he replied, taking her by surprise and extending his hand to her. "Deal." Lith stepped on the stand among some mild applause and took the Mogur's equivalent of a Spanish guitar from the hands of a musician. He asked the band to not accompany him, and then he started playing. Or better, he started cheating. Lith didn't know how to sing or play, but he had learned from magical beasts how to use air magic to reproduce whatever sound he wanted. It took him his full focus to perform a slightly modified version of The Noise of Silence by Shimon and Carbuncle. It was one of his favorite songs from Earth. It required only a guitar to be played, and it felt like it talked about him. He didn't look at Camilla, not even once. He was too busy trying to pluck random strings while following the rhythm. When he finished, the lead of the band shook Lith's hand and whispered, "Hope your lady friend doesn't play any instrument because whatever you didn't get a single string right. Good luck." "I don't need luck," Lith replied before going back to his table. "Did you like it?" he asked with an expectant look. "It's beautiful, but very sad. I would have never taken you for a poet and a musician." Her eyes were a little watery. She felt like the song talked about her too. Neither. Someone else wrote the lyrics." Lith chuckled and then explained to her the trick behind his performance. "Well, you've got some nerve." She couldn't help but laugh seeing how people had fallen for his deception and looked at Lith with admiration. "There's one thing I don't understand. Why go through all this trouble and then tell me the truth about it? No matter how flashy a magic trick was, once its secret was exposed it would lose its luster." "Because I wanted to impress you," he replied with a warm smile. "Magic, it's not only about exploding stuff or healing people. The beauty of Mogur is that magic is everywhere. It plays a big part in my life. In a way, it defines who I am. That's what I mean when I say that I wanted to impress you. Not through music or rhymes, that's not me. I'm a mage, hence I used magic to share something I like. As for the truth, I learned from experience that starting a relationship on a lie never works. They spent the rest of their dinner chatting, but this time Camilla called for the check the moment they were done eating. Lith took the box of sweets while she carried the flowers and accompanied her to the nearest warp gate. She fiddled with the control panel for so long that Lith started to fear she was too drunk to remember her own address. Weird. We drank even less than the last time, he thought. It's still early. Would you like to come to my place for a cup of tea and a snack? She asked while pointing at the box. I would love to. Lith replied a bit too fast, realizing she was completely sober. Camilla's house was a 2-room flat. The kitchen and the living room shared the same space. There were only 2 closed doors, which were likely to lead to the bathroom and the bedroom. Do you mind preparing the tea while I find a place for the flowers? Oh, great one. Everything you need is on site. Lith filled the teapot with water and put it on the stove. Everything worked with magic crystals, making it akin to a modern kitchen. Do you like your tea strong or light? Lith asked while picking the amount of leaves and mint. Both are fine, she replied. Lith turned around, discovering that she was standing right behind him. The first 3 buttons of her shirt were undone, revealing a fair amount of her bosom. That's at least a C cup. The moment Lith raised his eyes to meet Camilla's, she took him in her arms. One hand behind his head and the other on his neck, she forced Lith to bend down and kissed him. Softly at first, like a schoolgirl at her first, clumsy attempt. He didn't let her go, drawing her closer to him while she kissed him with growing passion until she clung to him as a lifeboat in the storm her life was. His mouth managed to part her frenzied lips at the first attempt, sending tremors along both their bodies. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, she pulled away from him. Wait, Camilla said with a quivering voice. Too fast, Lith asked without bothering to hide his disappointment. The bedroom is that way. She pointed at the second closed door as her legs wrapped around his waist, bringing their faces at the same level before starting to kiss Lith again.